Welcome, everybody, to Wire to Wire Sports Podcast, episode 118. I'm your handsome host, Gene Walzak. And to my upper left corner, I got Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, college Kittrell running the ones and twos. How you feeling tonight, Kittrell?
Feeling good, man. I'd be feeling a little bit better if I was celebrating an Ohio State national championship victory on Monday, but, I got to take what I can get, and so I'm feeling good.
I thought the Frogs would have beat Ohio State, but we'll get into that in a minute. I'm kidding. Coming from us in the upper right corner, we got Scholastic Shally, Uncle Shally, the man that has 6,000 nicknames, and he is super excited to talk about a Georgia national championship win. How you feeling tonight, Scholastic?
Can't wait to talk about this razor thin winning margin game that we watched on Monday.
It was razor thin, and it was a great game. Guys, you were tuned in for the entire first quarter. You were on your seat, 10-7 game, and then it was 65-7.
See, what happened was
it was 55 consecutive points for Georgia. I mean, I'll tell you right now, you know who I felt most bad for in that game? It wasn't TCU. It wasn't even Ohio State. Ohio State was one field goal away from playing TCU, playing for Natty. I'll tell you who I felt the most bad for. It's Bill Shawcross's Michigan Wolverines. Because if you watch Georgia's game plan for this game, and nothing against Bill, there's zero chance Michigan should have lost that football game to TCU. Because if they would have just replicated the simple game plan that Kirby Smart had, it wasn't like it was a crazy game plan. They ran it down their throat. They just bullied them up front. 7 yards, 8 yards, 9 yards. Yes, the tight ends got involved and the passing game was there. But if you watch the beginning of that game, it was boom, 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 boom. Over and over and over again. I felt bad for a Michigan fan, as if I'm being honest with you, I really felt like Michigan should have been there. TCU had no business beating that Michigan team. So, Shally, I'm going to start with you this week because, and I'm sure Kittrell could put the Ohio State spin. Ohio State was one field goal away from being a national championship. And that's fair. I get it. But, Shally, let's start with you this week. Watching that game, I know from our conversations prior, but tell the listeners, do you think Michigan would have stood a chance in that game versus Georgia? And what does that say to you about the loss for Michigan to TCU?
I mean, we sure as hell wouldn't have lost by what they lost by. No, listen, I mean, I said it last week. I think, for me, my loss was a little bit worse than Cottrell's. Not that either one of us believe in moral victories per se, but Ohio State can hang their hat on that, for a better part of that game, they were the better football team. They brought it down to a questionable play calling and decision, but, they had the chance to win the game, the last play of the game. I've said it before. I think Michigan pissed that game away. And, it's, the further away from it that I get, the more I believe that. We were talking about right before we came on air. I don't like to make excuses. They at the end of the game, TCU had more points. But like I said, for us to get there, Michigan had to do so many uncharacteristic things for TCU to win that game. So it definitely, it sucks. You're watching that game, like you said, Georgia went up, 10-0, and then TCU went right back down the field and scored. I was like, okay, all right, maybe we have a game now. And then, like you said, the next 2 hours were not good. It was not good football. It looked like, honestly, like a college team scrimmaging a high school team. It was ugly. It was ugly. There was no answers. TCU couldn't do anything on either side of the ball. And I think we talked about this as well. I think only having 1 week to prepare for Georgia, I think you saw a little bit of that as well. Like Georgia just lined up and did what they were going to do. And until you could stop them, they weren't going to come out of that game plan. And TCU couldn't do it, and they got washed. I feel bad for, I'll say you feel bad for them, but, I know it sucks to be a TCU fan. You got there. It was kind of like your magical run. You probably go back in obscurity for the next 40 years again until we see this. But, you got to enjoy it. I think they deserve to be there. They made more plays than we did when it mattered. They deserve to be in that championship game. I don't think it's a game anybody wanted to see. I'll comfortably die on that hill. Everybody would love to have seen either Georgia, Michigan, or Georgia or Michigan, Ohio State again. But it's, it is what it is. That's why you got to play the game.
I would have ran back Georgia, Ohio State again. That game was incredible. I can't lie to you and tell you that I didn't enjoy that football game. As close as it was and as worried as I was that Georgia was going to lose that football game. And I said it to you guys on the show. I thought that Ohio State, Ryan Day having a month to prepare is not good news. I told you the spread didn't make sense. It was very scary the way it looked. I was so nervous about that. I wasn't nervous about TCU at all. I knew what Georgia was going to do that game. They bullied them. It was just like it was watching high school football. If I was watching the JV team play the varsity team, that's the way that looked. Like, we're going to win this game. We're going to do it this way. We'll do it this way. And they just bludgeoned them. And I think Kirby Smart made Jim Harbaugh look a little silly in a sense that, like, hey, man, this is how easy it can be to destroy this TCU team and just bully them. Here's the one takeaway I had, and then I'll move right to the Ohio State fan, right to him. The one takeaway I had in that game was Georgia got, except one drive, Georgia got off the field. I'll give TCU credit. They went for it early. There's a reason they got blown out in that game. They were going for it on 4th and 6 on their own 39. They didn't, like, we're trying to win the game. If we get blown out, we get blown out, but we're going to keep trying to win the game. And I got to give TCU at least credit for that. They didn't. But when TCU went for it versus Michigan, or TCU had that big third down, couple big third downs versus Michigan, they kept getting it, right? Where Georgia got off the field. So I think the defense, but also, like Bill mentioned prior, the two terrible pick sixes and the fumble at the goal line, that's 21-point swing between those three plays. So, Cottrell, being an Ohio State fan, what was your thought process watching that game?
I mean, I feel like I didn't really think much about Ohio State in that aspect. I mean, I had felt like, after I saw TCU win last week against Michigan, I was like, if we win this game, then, I feel like this game between Georgia and Ohio State is essentially for the national championship. Now, had Michigan made it, that would have been a completely different story. But I just felt like Ohio State and Georgia, they just had too many horses to go up against this TCU team. And that's why I said last week on the show that I truly thought that this game would be completely over by 9:30, and it was, but it was over way before that. By 8:50, you could have went to bed happy if you were a Georgia fan, or if you weren't, you could have went to bed at least knowing that, Georgia was going to win the national championship. Like, there was no point where you thought TCU might have a chance in this one. Yes, Max had the one touchdown drive, but the one big play that got him down there was a coverage bust. And then you didn't see any more coverage busts from Georgia. So it wasn't like, TCU were making plays, on these 5-star kids. It was more so Georgia made a mistake, and they didn't really make any more mistakes after that. And you talked about tight ends getting involved. Lab McConkey had, a career game in that one. And Georgia had everything going for him. Ohio State did a good job at neutralizing Jalen Carter. Well, Jalen Carter had his way in this one. That whole Georgia defensive line were having a party at the quarterback.
If you wanted a tape on why you should take that kid with a top 3 pick, all you have to do is play that game over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
Jalen Carter was abusive in that game. By the way, just take 1 second. I want to shout out my man, Brandon Pfister. Brandon, the champion of our Bowl Mania, finished first place in Bowl Mania. Also, second place was Joseph Jeffers. Hendon Hooker got robbed. Both of those two will be getting wire-to-wire hoodies. That's 7 hoodies we owe so far. What's popping, Coach Dante? Appreciate you checking out. Kevin David, how you feeling? And for everybody listening at home, the stars are open. If you didn't see the post, if you see that in the comments that you can send stars now, Wire to Wire is now a monetized company with an LLC. So if you want to send stars, you can do it. Doesn't cost much. Show your support, show your love. Appreciate you. All right, off the topic of money, because I don't care about that much. I want to bring this up because I've seen it on the Cal Coward show, and I looked it up, and I'm like, wow, that is a disparity. Number of 5-star kids at Georgia versus TCU. Anyone want to take a guess?
No, I mean, it's lopsided beyond belief.
22-1.
15-1. It's pretty close, though. Here's the part that really stands out to me. Number of 4-star kids at Georgia versus TCU.
It's probably even worse.
30
It is worse, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 53 to 16.
Oof.
So Georgia has 68 4- and 5-star kids on their roster. Now, 3-star TCU has 61, Georgia has 22. Understood. But my point being is they pulled the same graphic up for Ohio State and Georgia, and it was nearly identical.
Makes sense.
5-star kids, 4-star kids. And that goes to Cottrell's point when Cottrell was talking about they didn't have the dogs to be in this game. They just didn't have them. I'm telling you, when I watch this football game, I just watched Big Brother smack little brother in the mouth and just did it over and over and over again. It wasn't close, and it was embarrassing. Wasn't the national championship we all wanted to see, and that sucks. That's terrible. But let's move on. Let's move forward. We want to talk about anything else you guys want to talk about that really amazing national championship game.
I mean, the only thing that I really wanted to add was I want to give Jalen Carter a lot of credit. They mentioned it on the broadcast, just the kind of guy that he is. After the Ohio State game, when he was rather pedestrian, he worked his ass off up until the game against TCU. They said he was going to the field or going to the track before meetings with the media and things like that to get his cardio up, to make sure that he was ready to go and that he didn't have another performance like that in the national championship game. So obviously TCU's offensive line isn't what Ohio State's line is, but I want to give Jalen Carter credit for, taking that onus upon himself to get himself ready. And that's the kind of guy you want on your team at the next level.
So can I ask you guys a question now that you bring that up? I don't care what team. Let's just say no team. You have issues at both spots. Who do you want on your team for the next 10 years? Is it Jalen Carter or Will Anderson Jr.?
Jalen Carter for me, and I don't have to really think about it.
Ooh, okay. For me, I'll go second because I want to split the vote. For me, it's been Will Anderson Jr. It's always been Will Anderson Jr. I think he plays a premier position in the NFL, that outside linebacker, edge rusher. I think that will be huge for any team that gets him. He's got a very TJ Watt type mentality. He's very, very intelligent football player. He sees the play coming. He's very great with his anticipation. I think that Will Anderson, I said this last year on this exact show. I said at the end of next year, Alabama is going to have the first and second overall picks in the draft. And it's very possible that could happen. I said that Bryce Young and Will Anderson Jr. will be the top 2 players taken in this draft. And I'm close to being right here. It might not be. I could be wrong, but I'm close. So we'll see. Who would you rather have, Bill? Will Anderson Jr. or Jalen Carter?
I'll take Will Anderson Jr. for pretty much the same reason you did. I think it's a more valuable position. You mentioned TJ Watt. He could be in the Micah Parsons type role. I just think you get more game-changing type plays out of that position than you will a dominant inside tackle. I think Jalen Carter has every opportunity in the world to be an absolute beast in the NFL, be an all-pro type guy every year, grades out to if he can stay healthy and be consistent. I mean, he could be a Hall of Fame type player. I don't take anything away from him whatsoever. Will Anderson Jr. has the ability to be a TJ Watt, Myles Garrett. You can line them up all over the place. You're going to get more impact plays out of somebody that plays on the edge like that.
The one thing that I'm cautious about with Will Anderson, and I still haven't, you guys know I'm going to be a junkie now that the college football season is over up until April. But the one thing that kind of worries me about Will Anderson is because, being in that outside linebacker role or jack position at Bama is what they call it, he's going to primarily rush the passer. And depending on what 3-4 system he goes to, I mean, if he goes 4-3, he'd be a small end. But depending on what 3-4 system he goes to, I don't know what he's like in pass coverage. Like, I don't know how he's going to fit in there and whatnot. So I would have to see that more often than not, because we see so many of the people that played in that jack position that were so dominant at Bama go to the league and not be as successful just because things are different. So I would have to, I want to see some more film on Will. I think he's a special player, but I think it's really important for him to go to the right system to be successful.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Chicago runs a 4-3. Eberflus runs a 4-3 that he took from Indianapolis. I'm almost 100% sure of that. So I don't know if Chicago would be the best system for him. Chicago having the number 1 overall pick after the whole situation with Houston. By the way, I'll get into that later. I want to get into that Lovie Smith stuff. That's later. But Chicago runs a 4-3. So based on what you said, Jalen Carter might be the better fit for a team like the Chicago Bears.
And it's not to say that he can't play a 4-3 end, because we see Micah Parsons isn't huge, but he's, hand in the dirt, getting after the passers. Like Will Anderson can do that. He just hasn't done that at Bama. He's been standing up basically his whole time there and getting after the passer. So it'll have to be something that he learns. He has more than enough talent to do it. I would just have to see that. That's all.
There's no doubt about it. That defensive-minded coach that Eberflus is, that he goes with one of those two defensive players. I actually really don't agree with the fact that they're talking about trading back. No, listen, if Indianapolis blows you away because they want to get Will Levis, which is the talk, and I'll get into that later. But if they blow you away and they give you the 5th overall pick and then a first, a second next year, yeah, okay, you drop 4 spots, but you're missing out on premier talent. I think when I look at this draft, I think that there's 2 defensive players that can be Hall of Famers, and that's Will Anderson Jr. and Jalen Carter. Now, I don't know if the other guys could develop in the Hall of Famers, but when I see this draft, I see 2 guys that stand out above the entire pack, and it's those 2.
Well, yeah, that'll be a conversation to be had. I don't know if they want Will Levis so bad. I don't know why they would have to trade up. I think he could fall in their lap at 5, but that's a topic for another day.
That's what apparently they want. They want Will Levis. That's.
I mean, if Chicago stays 1, they're not taking a quarterback.
Nope.
You got to feed
They're trying to get ahead of Houston because they're worried about Houston taking
Will Levis. Yeah, right.
I swear to you, I'm not kidding with you. Read the report.
No. I get that. I'm just saying, like, Houston they wouldn't have their pick of the litter with Bryce, CJ, and Will Levis sitting there. They're not using the pick on Will Levis. It's just not.
You
happening.
say that, but listen, I agree with you guys. I've seen the same thing you guys have. I'm not a huge Will Levis guy, but there's no one in the last 10 years that's had more arm talent coming out of the draft than Will Levis. It's not close.
It's
like
funny
because the way his arm grades out is better than anyone.
I told you, I agree. I mean, I put that video in the group chat, and it's silly stuff like that is why people are falling in love with him. Somebody, I don't know. It wasn't Greenberg. Somebody made a comparison for him today, and I think it's the most spot on thing in the world. Will Levis, is going to be Jay Cutler.
My head,
it's what he's. I think he has a better head on his shoulders maybe than Jay Cutler does, and I think he has the ability to probably progress more than Jay Cutler. But he's Jay Cutler. He's and you saw it. You saw it the last 5 or 6 games on the stretch. He thinks he can throw the ball through people. And that is just an awful, awful habit to have going to the NFL.
I'm not kidding when I tell you this, Bill. I didn't know who you listened to. I don't know what that situation was, but I knew where you were going as soon as you said that. Arm talent, no, because I see that. I see Jay Cutler. It's spot on. But we'll get in the draft later, talks closer to the draft. What I want to get into next is are way too early. We did this last year. Pretty close with a lot of these. But are way too early. Now, I did this differently. I guess I misunderstood it. But are way too early top 5 going into next year. Now, I'm doing it like what I think the top 5 teams are going to be in the country at the end of next year. Cottrell questioned that and did that different than I did. But that's okay. We're both explaining.
How'd you do it, Bill?
Wait, Gene, which way did you do it?
The top 5 teams at the end of next year, like who I think are going to be the top 5, the 4 playoff teams and then the 1 extra.
I did mine like how we're going to start next year, which I'm assuming is how Cottrell did it.
Correct. So I did it wrong. I apologize.
I will. Well, okay. I mean, mine. I mean,
Hey,
I
you
think
know what? We're gonna get into it.
Yeah, I was
Here we
just
go.
say I think 3 of mine are in the final 4 at the end of the year anyway, so it doesn't matter.
That's fair. This is a wild 5. I love it. Everybody's got different teams on here that haven't been on here before. It's obviously unique. Looks like everybody's got Georgia in the top 2. Of course, Homer Simpson's gonna have Ohio State 1. I knew that was coming. Guys, did you not expect that to come? Like, is that not something that you thought was gonna happen?
I'll say this is what I'm gonna say.
Consistent.
He is, yeah, but he's been more objectionable this year with them than I think he has been in the past. So for him to have them number 1, I'm actually a little bit surprised.
I was surprised when I seen it, but Cottrell, you're first on the list. Go ahead, tell us your top 5 and why they're your top 5.
So I'll go top to bottom just because we're talking about Ohio State now. Obviously, we're going to be losing out on CJ Stroud, but we just got word that basically our whole offense is coming back next year. You know, obviously Marvin and Ibuka are going to be back because they're true sophomores. Kate Stover, our starting tight end, he's going to be back. Mayan Williams is coming back. We thought there was a chance that he might go to the draft. Travion Henderson's coming back. And we're really not losing too much on defense either. We're young across the board. Obviously, you got a new quarterback coming in, Kyle McCord, but at this point, he's going to be a redshirt sophomore, and he was Marvin Harrison's high school quarterback. So I think he's going to be put in the best situation of the new quarterbacks in these, big time programs. You got a guy like Beck at exactly. You got two great receivers, great running backs behind you. Like, you're going to be put in the perfect position. At Georgia, Beck's coming in, and that Brock Bowers, he'll be back. They're going to be losing Darnell Washington. I think Georgia's defense too. Obviously losing Nolan Smith, who missed a lot of this year with his injury. Jalen Carter won't be there. Keely Ringo won't be there. But Georgia's going to be here, man. Gene already rattled off how many 5-stars and 4-star kids they got. They got people in the pipeline, and plus, if you look at Georgia's schedule coming up this upcoming season, it's absolutely a joke, and it's to no fault of theirs, but they're going to run the gauntlet. I truly don't think they have any potential slip-ups until the SEC championship game. 3, you got Michigan. Again, Michigan is bringing back pretty much everybody. Same boat. You got JJ coming back. Blake Corum said he was coming back. Donovan Edwards coming back. They're bringing back a lot of talent there, and I mean, you can't, as much as I don't like them, I can't go against what they've shown me the last 2 years, getting to the playoff and taking care of business. Of course, not in the playoff, but taking care of business during the regular season and beating Ohio State 2 years in a row. Number 4, the shocker here, I got Penn State. Penn State is going to be a really good team. Drew Aller, I've been on them since last year. They finally get rid of the mediocrity of Sean Clifford, and now they got a quarterback that can go win them football games. They had a true freshman back last year that went over 1,000 yards, and him mixed with Drew Aller. Drew Aller is he's really a pocket passer, but he's also athletic enough to where you can do QB design plays for him. Penn State's always going to have a tough defense. I know they're losing Joey Porter, but they're always competitive defensively. Penn State, I think they're going to give Ohio State and Michigan, a run for their money this year. And I think they're as quiet as it's kept. I really think they could truly win the Big Ten this upcoming season. And then my number 5, I got Washington. Washington is a team that they only had 2 losses this year. Again, a lot of their guys are coming back, including their quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. I think this Washington team in that Pac-12, where there really is no true top dog. Yes, you have USC there, but they're losing Addison. They couldn't play defense last year. They're losing, more guys on top of that. Bo Nix at Oregon, he's coming back, but I really think this is going to be Washington's conference to lose with all that they're bringing back. So that's why I got my 5 looking the way they do.
I mean, it's a solid reason. And listen, with Ohio State, you know a lot more about Ohio State than I do. I thought that Marvin Harrison would probably transfer out and go to and take that deal that USC sending him. But if you guys got his high school quarterback and that's what he wants, then yeah, he's probably going to stay. And I think that my rankings probably are a little bit off based off that. But I don't know what I'm getting at the quarterback position, and I'll get into my rankings in a minute, and I'll tell you why I don't have Ohio State on my list, which is probably a little nuts, but that's okay. Shally, give me your 5.
Yeah, so I think it's prevalent with with 3 of the teams that I have in the top 5, and that is the quarterback position. We know it's the most important position on the field of the NFL. I think that's even more magnified in college. I'm going to start with Georgia. Stetson Bennett is finally gone. He's 28. They won't let him come back to college anymore. He's done. They're going to hand the reins over to Carson Beck. They have a great freshman running back in Branson Ramos, who played well in the national championship game. Of course, they have all-world tight end Brock Bowers back for one more year before he goes to the pros and becomes a monster. The biggest question with them is the defense. They're losing Jalen Carter, they're losing Ringo, but we've seen it time in the last 2 years. Can Kirby Smart reload the gun again, and can they get back to that top level? Cottrell brought up a great point, which is also factored into me keeping them number 1. I will tell you, before I sent this over, I debated all day. I really wanted to put Michigan or Ohio State number 1. And then I looked at the schedule. They're going to really be able to break these kids in pretty easily. They're going to get a lot of playing time and a lot of experience. Their first trip, or their first test they really have, they do go to Knoxville. That's going to be a tough game. But until then, I tend to lean with Cottrell. I'd be really shocked if they're not rolling into the SEC championship game 12-0. Number 2, I went back and forth with this all day. I'm not much, I try not to be a homer like Cottrell. The biggest reason I put Michigan over number 2 is the quarterback position. JJ McCarthy's going to come back. He's going to be a junior. Got a ton of experience this year. I think as great as he played and as bad as he played at times in the college football playoff, that's all experience that he can put under his belt and learn from now. CJ Stroud is an all-time generational type QB for college for Ohio State. He's gone. That's why I gave the nod to Michigan. And on top of that, like Cottrell said, we have three of our starting offensive linemen back, and then word came out today that Keegan might come back as well. So we'll be returning 4 of the 5 guys we had last year. We have 2 guys from the portal coming in from Arizona State and Stanford. We're both second-team All-Americans. That line's going to be stacked again. And that's just building on top of the news that we got the other day that Blake Corum's coming back for his senior year as well. So you're going to get a healthy dose of Blake Corum and even more integration of Donovan Edwards next year. We have 4 of our top 6 receivers back. We got Cameron Loveland back, who's a great tight end. He's a 4-star kid. And the defense is returning 7 of 11 starters. At some point, you do have to give them credit and say they figured it out. I thought this upcoming year was going to be the year that we were really going to make, we were really going to turn the corner. Obviously, we were a little bit ahead of schedule. The only really tough game we have away, we have to go to Penn State. Other than that, we have Ohio State home next year. I like the way the season's shaping up for Michigan. Number 3, we have Ohio State, the Buckeyes. Again, we already talked about it. Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson, Kate Stroud, Kate Stover. The biggest question mark Ohio State has is Kyle McCord. I'm most likely going to be the starter next year. And the only other really question mark you really have about Ohio State is their defense. Brought Jim Knowles in last year. Didn't have the immediate impact that we thought he was going to have to Cottrell's, defense. They started a lot of young kids last year. Lost a couple guys after this year. But, you're not starting freshmen next year. Now you're starting sophomores that have 10 or 11 games of game experience. I expect Ohio State's defense to be better next year. I think the Big Ten East is going to be an absolute bloodbath this year because I don't think Michigan State's going to be as bad as they were last year as well. But I think Ohio State has every chance and more than capable of finishing the year, 1, 2, 3, or 4. 4 is the first surprising team, I think. I'm glad to see that Gene has them as well. I have the Florida State Seminoles. They were debatably the hottest team in the country, other than Georgia at the end of the year. They have Mike Norvell is finally got settled down there and starting to change the culture around and starting to change the attitude of that program back to what it was in Bobby Bowden age. They got a long way to go, before they start winning national championships, but Jordan Travis is going to be on the preseason list for Heisman candidates. And They have running back Trey Benson. It's that team is starting to look like it was, the Florida State Seminoles that we all grew up on, where they were dominant. I highly expect them to win the ACC next year. And then number 5, last but certainly not least, I got Alabama Crimson Tide. I think David Pollock might have completely set Nick Saban on fire this year
Yeah, he did.
in the offseason by saying Georgia dominates college football now. You best believe somebody probably paid for that at practice this week. But you listen, Gene said it. You're debatably losing the number 1 and number 2 players in the country. Number one and number 2 draft picks this year. How do they replace Bryce Young? They're in the same boat as Georgia and more so Ohio State. You're losing generational all-time school grade quarterbacks. Are they gonna go with what's that kid's name? Jalen Milroe. They have another freshman coming in that they think might battle for the position. They're a little bit of a reload phase as well. It's just hard to use reload with Alabama and Georgia because it's all 5-star kids. So you never know how much, how long the turnover is really going to be. But it's hard not to say they're not going to be there at the end. They always are. But I think Alabama out of the 5 I have, I think Alabama has the most question marks. That's the only reason I have them number 5. But I put them there because I think, I think Alabama gets a little bit back to more like Nick Saban football next year. I really do. I think they're a little bit more balanced on offense. And I think the offensive line's better, and I think the defense is going to be a little bit nastier than it was this year. So I had Penn State right there. I'd liked Washington as well because I think Washington's has the potential to go through the Pac-12 pretty easily. But I just sided with Alabama because they have Nick Saban. It's hard to ignore it.
So with my 5, I went with a little bit of different approach. I went with the top team in each conference, essentially. The top team in the best conference is Georgia, the SEC. They have a cakewalk schedule to get everybody accustomed to the playbook and ready for the big stage. Like you literally have like an 8-game practice. Just beat these guys up. A bunch of 4-star, 5-star kids. Kirby Smart has really put it together. The culture down in Georgia is incredible. They're replacing Jordan Davis, Javon Carter was already there. But my point being is they're replacing stud after stud after stud. Georgia should win the SEC, and that's why they're my number 1. Michigan's my number 2 for all the stability reasons that Shally laid out. You have J.J. McCarthy back. I do think it was a little corny, the standing on the field, watching TCU celebrate. Like, bro, you were 9.5-point favorites in that game. Like, don't stand on the field. You're not having your Stephon Diggs moment. Like, I thought that was corny, but just my opinion. Michigan on that end would be my number 2 overall pick because of the stability. Now I get a little homerish. It's fine. I got it. My Quinn Ewers, my Hook'em Horns, Texas Longhorns. I have them top 3. They're the best team in the Big 12, in my opinion, for next year. You have a lot more experienced quarterback position. He's got a full season under him. I think Quinn Ewers will take the next step forward and be a Heisman candidate next year. Jordan Travis, Florida State. You want to talk about Heisman candidates? If you look at what I'm doing, it's all based outside Georgia. It's all based around the quarterback position. Florida State is killing it in the transfer portal. If you haven't looked out, look at the transfer portal. Florida State's just signing kids, 4-star kids, 5-star kids. They're going to dominate the ACC. I don't think any team gets close to them in the ACC. And then this is my Lincoln Riley, Homer. I like him. I like the team. I like where he goes. I think they'll go spend $5 million and bring in a top guy because that's what they do. They're USC. That's why USC is here. Second year, Lincoln Riley. You see what he did in the first year? Year 2, it's even better. Lincoln Riley is a quarterback whisperer, constantly 5-star kids. Bang, bang, bang. I think USC has a great season next year, and I think their offense is unstoppable. That's my 5.
Interesting. I'll say the one thing about Bama, because I'm sure we're gonna talk about each other's list here real quick. One thing about Bama that the reason why I don't have them is because of that quarterback position. Milroe is not a guy that I think is going to lead Bama to be one of those top teams. I think if they can get someone to come in the portal, or if that true freshman kid comes in and takes the reins, I think they would have a shot. But I don't see it in Melrose, honestly. Like, I'm actually surprised that they even recruited him based off of the quarterbacks they've had before him, at least as of lately, with Hurts and Bryce Young. Like, he's of that same mold, but talent wise, I don't think he's close to either of them. Like, and I don't even see the potential personally.
I think that's kind of why I said what I said too. I think they're going to try to be a little bit more balanced, like they were in Jalen Hurts' first year. I don't think they're going to be able to rely on that position like they did with Bryce Young last year. Like, if they have to go out and throw the ball 55 times a game, they're probably going to be in trouble next year.
You guys know this better than I do, and maybe my fault for not fully understanding it. But is Malachi Nelson transferring?
I don't believe so.
So he's just coming in behind Caleb Williams for another year?
Yeah, I mean, he's a true freshman. He'll be a true freshman.
So, but the question is, he'll sit behind Caleb Williams next year?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to come in probably, I'm assuming, somewhat soon. He'll be there for spring ball, get accustomed to the playbook, and then he'll be Caleb's backup. Caleb leaves, and he's going to start as a, redshirt freshman and go from there.
Look at the quarterbacks that are coming back next year. You got Caleb Williams, Jordan Travis, Quinn Ewers, J.J. McCarthy. It's hard for me not to believe they're going to be 4 of the top 5 teams in the country.
The problem is with at least Quinn is talented. You guys know how talented I think Quinn is. But the problem with Texas, in my opinion, is obviously they're losing Bijan. And then the question mark with Xavier Worthy, I think that's huge. But I just don't know with that Texas team. Plus, I don't know how Quinn's going to respond to the pressure of Arch being on campus and, having that backup role. Like, he's going to have to play tight. And if he plays tight, I think Quinn is one of the most talented kids in the country. And I think he can be a Heisman candidate. But if that pressure gets to him, like how I got to Spencer Rattler when he had Caleb Williams behind him, then we're going to be in for quite the show with Texas.
I mean, I don't know who's going to start. I said from the get-go, I think Archie's going to have every opportunity in the world to win that job, and I don't think Quinn's played consistent enough to not have it be a competition. That's my big question mark with Texas. I think they have talent elsewhere. Cottrell brought up the Worthy thing. There's a lot of smoke that he might be leaving. I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance Archie Manning starts next year.
Worthy leaving would be so stupid. You have 2, not 1, 2 top 10 quarterbacks in the country on one friggin' team. Where are you going to improve your draft stock?
There's whispers that he might go where he was supposed to go, but I don't think he'll come back. But you have to remember, he went to Texas because it was kind of like the last chair that he had in musical chairs. Like he was gung-ho going to Michigan until he did not have a lot of options after admissions wouldn't let him in at Michigan. He committed early to Michigan, and he was Michigan the whole time. He never wavered. And then admissions wouldn't let him in, and he had to find a spot real quick because it was so late in the cycle. I don't think he likes it there. I don't think he ever had any intention of going there. And again, I'm not saying he's going back to Michigan, but that wasn't his first. Texas wasn't even his Final Four originally, so I don't think he likes it. I think he might. Worthy's a name to watch going to USC. If you want to be completely honest, I think that's a great move for him to go to USC because I don't think Marvin.
I can understand him going to another top 10 quarterback in the country, but you have 2 that are playing in Texas right now. 2.
I mean, Quinn's not there yet. I mean, I think we all agree that he has the potential. He's not a top 10 quarterback right now.
In the country going into next season, yes, he is.
Nah, I disagree.
You don't think he's a top 10 quarterback going into next year?
All you could do is judge him off what he's done so far. He's not a top 10 quarterback right now.
Talent wise, I think he
talent wise,
is.
we're agreeing. He hasn't put it on the field yet. He hasn't put it together yet.
I think Quinn
That
Ewers is the top 10 quarterback in the country. I don't think he's put it together yet, but you see the flashes. You see what he can be.
Bro,
And I think
nobody's arguing his potential.
But there's so many teams starting brand new quarterbacks. There's so many, like you can't put how many quarterbacks that are returning that are you putting over him? You're putting 10 returning quarterbacks over Quinn Ewers?
I
I guess
Caleb.
you get into the like. I'm not doing it, but you get you have a lot of returning quarterbacks of schools that we don't have here. Like Quinn, I think obviously is better than Bo Nix, but like you get that caliber quarterback returning. Michael Penix Jr. is coming back. I think Quinn's better than him. You know how highly I think of Quinn Ewers. I think Quinn is going to go to the NFL and he's going to be a very good quarterback in the NFL.
He's graded out a 99.8 on prospects. Like that's one of the highest grades you'll ever see in a quarterback.
Yeah, his spark rating was insane. But you also have Spencer Rattler coming back, who finally put the pieces together at the end of the season at South Carolina. I think that's going to be a sneaky team, depending on what they do. Depending on what they do in the portal. So
that was a great move for him to go to South Carolina and rejuvenate his career. I'm not that familiar with who South Carolina's coach is. But what I will say is
Baby Beamer.
Yep.
Who is it?
Shane Beamer.
But I will say this, whoever it was, it seems as if he fixed a lot of Spencer's attitude issues and put him on the right track to where he needs to be. He was a projected number 1 overall draft pick going into 2 years ago.
Yep.
He's still in college. And he looked great at the end of last season. So I'm happy for him.
Yeah, he's again, I mean, it's Cottrell mentioned earlier. He is a kid that can't have the guy breathing down your neck. Like we went through that. We saw that. He transferred out and now he's back to being the big man on campus of South Carolina. He's the guy that needs that confidence to play well. And he has it. And his last 3 games of the year were they beat Clemson. I mean, they
Tennessee.
Tennessee. They beat three upsets in a row and he played great.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, that's an interesting characteristic to have if you're going to try to be a professional quarterback.
Now, Cottrell, you've done this before, and I'm going to ask you to do it again before we wrap up college. I want you to tell me, not the 2023 number 1 overall pick, because we kind of have an idea what that is. But you do this when we do this way too early. Who's going to be the number 1 overall pick in 2024?
24? That's a
But you do it all the time. Last year we talked about Will Anderson and Bryce Young. We knew that, right? 2 years ago, you told everyone about Kayvon Thibodeau was going to be the number 1 overall pick. You end up finishing.
I mean, this year, 2024. I mean, you got to think those are the guys that are the true freshmen right now. I mean, I think Drew Aller is going to have a really good chance to be
next year's draft, next year's NFL draft.
Oh, I thought you said okay.
Now.
Caleb Williams.
Okay, so Caleb Williams is the pick.
Caleb Williams.
Yeah. I thought you were going to give me a defensive player, linebacker, somebody that's not a quarterback.
Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is the talent that even if you don't need a quarterback at 1, someone's going to give you the haul to come up and get Caleb Williams that you want.
Caleb Williams was 1 this year with Chicago taking over Justin Fields.
They got the same coach, so I say no. I think their coach likes Justin. They see what they can have with Justin, and they build with Justin. Ultimately, do I think Caleb Williams will be better than Justin? I mean, I think he has the talent to be, but I think it's different when you have a coach that's already there, established. They had a year under his belt with them, as opposed to a new coach coming in with a quarterback that somebody else drafted.
Who's number 1 draft pick next year? You think it's Caleb Williams, Bill?
I mean, it's
always Caleb Williams. Give me a defensive player.
The problem is it's probably Caleb. I mean, we get into this cycle every year. I mean, somebody who has an awful year probably is going to need a quarterback, and they're probably going to be picking 1 or 2 next year. It's something that happens. You know, we see it all the time. Defensively's tough. I mean, it's you have the outliers kind of like. I mean, you look at like Aiden last year. Like Aiden was projected to be a first round pick, and then he had a great year, and then all of a sudden he just went like all the way up the board. Like it's the defensive players. It's harder to project because you really have to see them play. Whereas the quarterbacks and the offensive skill position guys, it's a little easier to go off of what you know. Like they're more of a sure thing, I guess you could say. I don't know. I mean, again, if you would have asked me, for a Charlie, I probably would have given you Caleb.
That's fair. No, Caleb's the fair answer. I understand that, but like what I was looking for was when he told us about Kayvon Thibodeau before he played at all.
Yeah, I get it.
JT Tuimoloau at Ohio State was a number 2 overall prospect in 2021, and he had a great season this year. I expect him to build on that too. So I think he's going to be another like high name. Penn State's left tackle is going to be up there because he went back to school. He would have been a top 15 pick this year. He decided to go back to school, so he's going to be a top 10, top 5 pick next year. Those are like the guys that immediately come to mind for me to be in like that top 5, top 10 area. But I mean, I think Caleb Williams, no matter what, is going to go number 1, even if it's a team that has, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Justin Fields, whoever. He's going to go number 1 because that haul to come up to get Caleb Williams is going to be insane.
Okay. So let's move forward, gentlemen. Let's get into the NFL. We have playoffs this week, but before we get in the playoffs, I want to talk about the coaching carousel because a couple coaches were fired and a couple situations are still, I guess, on the fence. Like Ron Rivera hasn't been let go yet, which I think is going to happen. I'll get into that in a second. But the coaching carousel, finally, guys, I've been calling for it since show 1. Finally, 18 episodes. For me, finally, the Arizona Cardinals have relieved Cliff Kingsbury of his duties. They are interviewing, they've been given permission to interview Sean Payton. Let's talk about that job first because Sean Payton's so prevalent and that name gets brought up. I don't think he goes there. I think it's a terrible situation for Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton has his pick of the litter of any job available. Let's get into that one first. By the way, after that, I want to ask you guys after we're done this, what job is the worst? And I have the answer. I'm 100% sure. I have it. I'm 100% sure. So the Arizona Cardinals, who is their next head coach?
I mean, again, you start to hear it leak out and, they talk to him and apparently that's the route they want to go. The one interesting thing I heard with Sean Payton is he is going to, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's going to want to bring his own like GM with him. And obviously you can now do that in Arizona with their GM stepping down. I don't think he's going to fit in certain positions because Sean Payton's a guy that's going to want certain control over personnel and draft picks and stuff like that. And a lot of teams don't like doing that. They don't like their coaches having all that power. So, as much as, like Gene said, everybody's throwing his name in pretty much every open vacancy. I think a lot of them you can scratch right off the bat. He's not going to. I think Arizona's – listen, we've talked ad nauseum about Cliff Kingsbury and then, how good or how bad he's been. And then on top of that, you have the Kyler situation. I'm really curious to see how he responds. I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm you're going into a position where a kid's leadership, work ethic, and everything else have been questioned. And, for the worst part, been proven correct with what people are saying. And now he's coming off an ACL tear. So,
and now your number one wide receiver wants out.
Wants no parts of it. I look at what Sean Payton walked away from, which was a way better situation than what he would be going into if he went to Arizona.
Correct.
And I think that's the crazy part of this for him to take a couple years away from football and then to come back for this situation. That's just like the common sense, like hitting me in the face. Like I can't see it. But again, I think he can walk into Arizona, and I think he's going to have complete control if that's the way they decide to go. And I think that's going to factor into this a little bit more than a lot of people are talking about right now. It's not a job I would want. I'll be 100% honest.
I'll tell you who I think takes the job. I think that job is thrown at, and I think he takes it because it's in the same division. He's used to the division. I think that's DeMeco Ryan's job. I really believe that. Yeah, they're going to put the horse out for Sean Payton. DeMeco Ryans, in my opinion, is the hottest head coaching candidate headed into this offseason. And that's the guy I would want to develop the culture around Kyler Murray, give him a defense. And he's the tough-nosed guy, the hard-nosed guy that's going to make players coach. He already was a player. I think DeMeco Ryans is the perfect fit for Arizona. And I think that's where he'll go. I really believe that. I think Sean Payton, listen, there's smoke, right? The Broncos, we want to interview Sean Payton. Everyone's going to want to interview Sean Payton. I'll tell you where Sean Payton's going to go. But I'll get into that because I don't think – I think the coach that is still on active for the team that Sean Payton will go. And I've put this out there on social media.
I know.
And that's a perfect situation for him.
For him, it is. The problem is, all right, I'll let Cottrell go, and then we can get into that.
I was going to say, with Sean Payton, I can almost guarantee you he's not going to Arizona because the Saints are going to ask for the Cardinals' top 5 pick, and the Cardinals aren't going to just come up off of that. And so the Saints could really just say no. Then, like, if you don't want to give us your first round pick, then no, he's not coming there. So I don't think there's any shot that he goes to Arizona for that simple fact alone, let alone the situation of, Nuke wanting out, JJ Watt's leaving, Kyler is hot and cold coming off, and he's coming off an ACL injury. I think the interesting part about him and that job search in Arizona is they already came out and said that Kyler Murray is going to have some input. Obviously, he's not going to have final say in who comes in, but they're going to consult Kyler Murray about what coach they're bringing in. So it has to be a coach that gets along at least somewhat with Kyler Murray, whether Kyler thinks that he can walk over him and in that aspect, or if it's a coach that Kyler thinks can develop his game and turn him into the superstar quarterback that he has the talent to be. So I think that plays a huge part in who the Cardinals are going to ultimately go and get.
I think it's got to be. And I say this, man, guys, you know what I do?
We agree.
I predict with my heart and not with my head. I do that often. I think the perfect coach to be able to mesh with that team and to get Kyler Murray where he needs to be at is a DeMeco Ryans or like a Brian Flores type. Those hard-nosed defensive guys that are not going to take your bullshit, that are going to tell you where you stand and force you to be the best version of yourself, or you're going to sit. And it's not going to be like, come on, Kyler. Like Cliff Kingsbury got ran over by Kyler Murray. You can't do that. You can't allow that. And I think that those guys are perfect for that situation. I think it's Brian Flores. I think I really believe it. DeMeco Ryans' his job to lose.
I'm going to say I think they go the Dan Quinn is the route I go. I think they get a good defensive coach, but I think they go the Dan Quinn route. I got other guys. The guys you mentioned, I like them as coaches. I just got them taking other jobs. That's all.
I get it. That's fair.
Gene already has my pick for he already said my name. I think Brian Flores is the next head coach in Arizona.
I would love that. I think that's perfect. Brian Flores does not take shit, and he doesn't waver on who he is and where he stands. And I love that, and I respect that about him. I hope he gets a head coaching job this offseason. I just think that a lot of it's a very specific head coaching job he's going to get because a lot of NFL owners feel some sort of way about the way the lawsuit against the NFL and against Stephen Ross. And even though he's right and he's 100% right, that doesn't mean they're not shitty people and they're not going to make sure him finding a new job is
tough.
Not easy.
Yeah.
So the next job I wanted to talk about was the Houston Texans. So this job all of a sudden isn't a bad job. It's a bad organization, but it's not a bad job. You're going to walk into number 2 pick. You'll be able to draft your franchise quarterback. You have some young talent on that team. Damian Pierce, Derek Stingley Jr. There's a lot of young talent on that Houston Texans roster. I think this is a more coveted job than it actually has been for years. I hate the Houston organization, but I'm going to tell you who they're going to hire. I know it already. Insider trading. Houston hires Jonathan Gannon. I'm telling you this right now. Just follow me. If you remember what happened last year, Houston was all set to hire Jonathan Gannon. They had him in for a second interview. And then all the head coaching vacancies were finished. And the entire sports media world was none of the African-American coaches who had been hired. They've been passed up. They've been looked over. And the NFL went to Houston and was like, listen, you got all this shit. I'm telling you, conspiracy gene. We've had all this shit going on with Brian Flores and the situation in Miami. All these coaches overlooked. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Lovie Smith was hired. And it was like, it wasn't a second interview. He got one interview and they're like, oh, okay, Lovie Smith. It was so quick if you remember how it happened. I think that is, no, and I think that is why Lovie got hired. I think they always wanted to hire Jonathan Gannon. 1 year of Lovie, they scapegoat him. He's gonna get he gets fired for winning a football game, which I'll get into later. Jonathan Gannon's next head coach of Houston Texans.
I have the same, and for a lot of the reasons you just said. Not going quite down the tinfoil hat alley that you are, but I do believe that they really wanted to hire him last year, and I think a lot of things happened at the end that they didn't. He's been attached to this job for a long time, even after they gave it to Lovie with the season the Eagles are having. As soon as, hopefully it's not until after the Super Bowl, but once he's released and allowed to talk to them, I think you're going to see that whole situation escalate pretty quickly. So, my pick is Jonathan Gannon to go to the Texans.
I think the Texans' whole interview search last year was interesting because they had Josh McCown come in on 2 interviews, which was weird. Obviously, they hired Lovie. They had Brian Flores. Gannon had 2 interviews, and there was someone else that had a couple of interviews with the Texans. But I'm 100% with you, Gene. I think that the Texans absolutely hired Lovie to save face with everything that they had going on. And it was just like all right, well, let's get some good PR for once. And we're going to be bad anyway. No matter who we hire, they're not going to have a good season. So we'll just hop back on the horse in the following offseason. And that's exactly what they're doing. So, I mean, I think this job can somewhat be coveted because of that number 2 pick, but I'm less optimistic as you are. I'm not going to say this is the worst situation because they have that pick and then they have some young talent on that roster, but just bad ownership. It's a bad roster as a whole. Yes, they have some key pieces that are there, but it's a bad roster as a whole. Yep. I think a lot of people might turn this down. Like if Jonathan Gannon thinks that he can get a better opportunity next year in that search, then I don't know why you wouldn't stay on a team that either you win a Super Bowl with or you have the potential to win a Super Bowl with in the Eagles right now. So I think they're going to have to kind of reach to get that head coach. And so I got it being one of 2 people, both former quarterbacks. Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, because I think he doesn't deserve a head coaching job right now. And that'd be a guy that they can reach. And he'd be like, well, I'm not getting one now. And I think he would accept that. Or Josh McCown, just because they interviewed him twice last year. And it's another guy who's underdeserving of a head coaching job. But of course, that opportunity gets thrown at him. You have to take it.
D'Amico has already turned this job down, Kyle. He didn't want to interview with them. He denied interviewing with them. I wanted to bring that up for a minute because D'Amico he's going to have his pick of the litter, man. He's the best coordinator in the league right now. So I don't think that he touches that job with a 10-foot pole.
He was there, so he knows what that ownership is like and all that. So I'm sure he wants no parts of that.
He has no desire to work for them. Good
All
for
right,
him.
so the next one I want to get into is the Indianapolis Colts. Indianapolis has I guess they're going to interview Jeff Saturday, which is an absolute joke. I feel like I want to pull my hair out when I look at that situation. He went 1-7 as a head coach, 1-7 or 1-6. It's one or the other.
Lost 7 straight.
So 1-7 as a head coach. He shouldn't have been hired to begin with. You had Reggie Wayne on the staff. You took Jeff Saturday from ESPN. Blew a 33-point lead, largest in NFL history. Jim Irsay is a piece of garbage. Okay, let's just be clear there. I think Jim Irsay lures Jim Harbaugh away from Michigan, and I think the next head coach for the Indianapolis Colts is Jim Harbaugh.
I said the exact same thing, Gene. I had Jim Harbaugh being their next head coach. I think that would be something that entices him. Obviously, Jim is big on the Russian attack, and they got one of the best backs in the league in Jonathan Taylor. It seems like Jim, all these reports have been leaking about, if Jim gets offered an NFL head coaching job, he's willing to leave this year as opposed to how it was last year. I know he didn't have an offer last year, but it seemed like he was more on the fence last year. Now it seems like if he gets the offer, he's going. And I think the Colts are going to be the ones to give him that offer. It seems like their GM is going to be more aggressive this upcoming season because at this point, you've run all your QBs out of town, you run your head coach out of town. You have to get some sort of stability or you're going to be next on the chopping block. So you have to make that splash. And then you're going to ultimately have to make a move and get one of these top quarterbacks or trade that pick to get an established, really good quarterback to save face. So I really think the Colts are going to go try to make a splash. And I think that splash is going to be Jim Harbaugh.
I know Charlie doesn't agree.
No, I don't. I don't think he goes there for a couple of reasons. I don't think he wants to deal with Jim Irsay. He knows who he is from being a player there. They don't have a quarterback on the roster that's worth a shit. And there's no guarantee they can move up to get one. I just don't. I think there's another job or two I think that he would leave for if they offer him full control. Harbaugh's made no bones about it, though. He wants absolute full control top to bottom. That's one of the reasons I think everything broke down with Minnesota last year. Indianapolis has got a good GM and Chris Ballard. They're not going to fire Chris Ballard to hire Jim Harbaugh. It's not going to happen. That's the biggest reason I don't think he's going there. I think they go somebody more defensive. I've read a couple things today about this. He hasn't interviewed yet, but I think he's going to. They requested permission from Dallas to do it. I think Dan Quinn is up in Indianapolis. I think they need a defensive coach, somebody to get that team, get that defense back on track. They have way too much talent for that defense to be as leaky as it has been the last 2 years. And I don't think Indy's going to be in on certain other people because, like Gene's point, I don't think certain people want to go work for Jim Irsay. I really don't. And I think it's something that's not talked about enough. The dude is kind of a scumbag, and I don't think people want to work for him. I really don't. I was shocked Frank Reich. I think Frank Reich had to take that job because he had the opportunity to become a head coach. But I think a lot of established guys aren't going to go there and put up with a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes there. But I think Dan Quinn would be a good fit there. Hire an OC. We all know how great Jonathan Taylor can be when he's healthy. They have to get a quarterback. But they need somebody to fix that defense. That defense is way too talented to play the way it's played the last 2 seasons.
Agreed. I agree with you 100%. There's only couple more, and then we'll get into one wild card. Now, I my wild card. I'm going with it. Mm-hmm. But the Broncos have a head coaching position open right now. I think this is going to be Shane Steichen's job. And the reason I think it's Shane Steichen's job is because he has experience with a mobile quarterback and how to use it and create an offense around mobile quarterback like Jalen Hurts. They see that. They're like, we have Russell Wilson. We can really open up the offense, which Shane did in Philadelphia with Russell Wilson. I think that's why he's a very coveted after offense coordinator after the way the Eagles look this year. He's been requested to be interviewed by multiple franchises already. I think Shane Steichen is the next head coach of Denver Broncos.
So for me, Denver is the most peculiar team here. I know they already. I know that obviously they went Peyton. The other thing we're going to talk about in a minute, which I 1,000% agree with you, I think is going to be the first domino that needs to fall one way or the other before I think Sean Payton decides where he's going to go. I think if that domino doesn't fall, I think there's a decent shot that Sean Payton goes to Denver. If not, I don't disagree with you with Shane Steichen. I also think Frank Reich is like a kind of undercover, low-key dark horse to get that job. I think he's an established offensive guy. I think he's a guy that's obviously could be able to get along with Russell Wilson, but he's more strict. He's more of a hard-nosed guy, and he's not going to be Nathaniel Hackett disaster. I think Frank Reich will develop an offense around Russell that will let everybody. I mean, listen, they have the talent on that team that will let him thrive. So I think Denver becomes a very, very interesting destination depending on what happens with that other team.
Yeah, so good, Cottrell.
Denver, I got DeMeco Ryans going there. I think the Broncos situation is better than what people think. Obviously, they had a mediocre year this past year, but the defense, you got Pat Surtain the second, that's obviously going to be a cornerstone corner for you. You got Simmons back there. You have Judy and Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams. Like you have key pieces. You just have to figure out how to get Russell Wilson to be successful. And obviously Nathaniel Hackett couldn't do that. I think that Broncos team has the ability. I thought they could have been a playoff team this year. So they have the talent to be good. I just think they need the right people in place, and they need to get the right mindset, And I think with this new ownership group, I think they'll be able to talk with Ryans and let them know what direction they think that the organization needs to go. And I think he goes in and he takes that team by storm.
I actually want to give the Denver Broncos organization a compliment. I hate doing that because I'm not a big fan of them, especially after what Elway did last offseason, showing up drunk an hour late to an interview with Brian Flores. But let me give them a compliment. Them getting rid of Nathaniel Hackett when they did could sell a head coach on the job, because the last 2 games of the season, Russell Wilson actually looked like Russell Wilson. Didn't look like a shell of himself. They 27-24 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs and a 31-28 win over the Chargers. The offense didn't look anemic. And if you wanted to sell that Russell Wilson isn't spent, you just did it. It was Nathaniel Hackett that was the issue. We thought we were going to get Aaron Rodgers. Total mistake on our behalf. He screwed up our offensive game plan. Look at the way Russell Wilson looked the last 2 games of the season. That's your sales pitch, right? Russell, that job's not a bad job. It's not a bad job at all. Broncos have a very strong fan base. It's a good environment to coach football. It's a division that's going to get a ton of primetime games, as you've seen how many they got this year when they got Russell Wilson. It's a good job. Not bad. One more job available, and then we'll talk about like a wild card job, because there's still people that could be let go. I think Ron Rivera is going to get let go. I still think that's going to happen. I think that Mike McCarthy gets let go, but we'll get into that in a minute. Carolina Panthers. Carolina did finish strong. They did finish strong. Where do you think they go as far as head coach?
So I'll give you a name that both of you guys have mentioned already. I think Carolina has shown that they like the offensive-minded coaches. That's just kind of their philosophy. They draft a lot of defense, and they have all that talent there defensively, but it seems like they like these offensive-minded guys, and I think Shane Steichen is the guy for the Panthers. I think that's the philosophy-wise, that's just what they like. They want an innovative head coach that he thinks outside the box offensively and can find ways to get them successful on the field. Obviously, Matt Rule didn't work out for him, but that's just the kind of mindset I feel like the Panthers are looking for. And I think Shane Steichen can go there, and they still need to get a quarterback for him to even have a chance to implement his offense and all that. But I think Shane Steichen's direction they go.
Okay, Bill.
I think they stay with Steve Wilkes. I think they do what the Raiders should have done last year. I think they keep him on staff. I think they signed him probably a shorter term deal. I don't think he's going to have as long as leash as a more established guy would get, or contract wise. I think they give him a shot though. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to say when you bring a new voice into the room and the whole franchise turns around and starts playing better. How you don't keep that continuity going and give him another chance. I think the other big thing is I don't think Carolina is an attractive job as some of these other jobs. So I don't think they're necessarily going to get, out of this cycle of coaches, maybe who they want to. I don't like. Obviously, I don't think they have any shot of getting Sean Payton or somebody like that. So I think they stay home, and I think they give the job to Steve Wilkes and see what he has.
So I have a very interesting, and this is where Gene is constantly playing with his heart and not his mind. Now, I told you I think D'Amico Ryans goes to Arizona. I think that Brian Flores gets the job in Carolina. I think that I think that you said it perfectly, Cottrell. They draft defensively. Brian Flores is the defensive head coach. I think they build that defense up. They get a solid offensive coordinator in there, and they get a quarterback. They allow Brian Flores to draft a quarterback he always wanted to and not give him Tua, which he didn't want, very notably. I think Brian Flores' job to lose in Carolina. I think it's a perfect fit. And I think that he instantly makes that team into the best team in the NFC South.
I do want to say one thing here. You notice that I didn't bring up Brian Flores' name at all. That's not to say that I don't think he's a qualified head coach. I just think there's so much stuff behind the scenes that goes into it. And I think he's only 1 year removed from, the whole lawsuit and all that. I just don't see any of those 32 teams bringing him in for their head coaching job. If one team was to do it, I would say it would be the Broncos, just because they have new ownership and they're not fully involved with what was going on, at this time last year when he was interviewing all those jobs. But that's the only reason why Flores' name doesn't come up for me. I think he moves on and gets a DC job. I'm hoping that it's in Cleveland. Knowing our luck, it won't be, but I think he moves on, gets a DC job, does a great job, and next year's coaching carousel, he's up for another job. But that's the only reason why I didn't bring him up. That would be
such a bad move for him. We talked about this before. I think it'd be a terrible move for him to move from an organization. And I kind of want Bill's opinion on this, right? I think that's a bad move to move to Cleveland. And let me explain to you why on air. This way.
Well, not just Cleveland. I'm just mean DC job in general.
Why leave the stability that you have? This is what happens when NFL teams fire their head coach. A new coach comes in and gets his own staff. And it doesn't matter how good you are defensively. Stefanski is on the hot seat. He's been on the hot seat second half of this year. If that Deshaun Watson experiment is a disaster, Stefanski's going to get fired. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to clean house on the staff. It doesn't matter how good his defense is. In Pittsburgh, Tomlin's job security is through the roof. Why not stay in Pittsburgh until a head coaching opportunity? You could be the DC in Pittsburgh. You could go move up and be the DC in Pittsburgh. I understand there's not a job available now for that, but the point being is I wouldn't move from where I'm at. Gerard Mayo is perfected this in New England. Like, she's going to be the linebackers coach until my time comes. No, I think Brian Flores does the same thing in Pittsburgh.
And I get that point, but I just think that Brian Flores knows that he's one of the top 32 guys in the world to be, a head coach. And so I just don't know how long you could stick around in that assistant role, knowing that you're one of the best. It's not like he's still paying his dues to get up there. Gerard Mayo, obviously, he's paid his dues and all that, but I think it's a different situation with Flores. Flores has already been successful as a head coach. And I think Cleveland specifically, I think if you come into a situation where, Stefanski is on that hot seat, let's say they move on from Stefanski in the middle of the year, I think Brian Flores would then get that interim tag. And if he's successful with them, he's going to be the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And I think that could be the same with pretty much any situation he goes to. If you're going to a team that has like a fringe head coach that may get let go, they're hiring you, expecting you to be able to fill that interim role. And if you do a good job at that, there's no reason why that team won't stick with you moving forward, unless it's a team like the Las Vegas Raiders where they don't care how successful you are. If you're not that name, they don't want you. Outside of them and a couple others, then I think you're good.
I want to finish this topic out, Bill. Let me know what your opinion is of that.
I agree with Gene on this one. I wouldn't leave the Steelers. Not only are you at one of the most stable organizations in the entire league, you're one of the most well-respected organizations in the entire league. Rooney's hold a lot of weight within the NFL. I think that will go a long way to help clear up some of the stuff that is behind the scenes with Brian Flores. On top of that, I disagree a little bit with Cottrell. I don't know why you would go to Cleveland hoping you get that job. And again, I don't think a DC is necessarily like a big step for him, because to your own point, Cottrell, he's already proven he's a capable head coach. So I don't think being a DC is too much different than what he's doing right now. At that point, I would bide my time, hang out with Mike Tomlin, keep getting, good words put in from the Rooneys and the Steelers organization, other places, and then wait for that job that you really want. And then when you really want, you go interview it and you hope you get it. So in my opinion, if I'm Brian Flores, I am 100% staying put.
The other thing that I just wanted to add on just real quick to that is when Brian Flores was in Miami, we heard all the rumors about them trying to go get, Brian Flores made it known behind the scenes that he wanted to go get Deshaun Watson. And so I think that relationship as well, knowing that
fair point,
that, I can go there, be their DC. And if you go there and you're their DC and you perform well and Stefanski performs well and you guys win, then you're going to get a head coaching job regardless, because they're going to be like, hey, this Browns team, obviously they were terrible in 2022 defensively. Flores went there. Now they're top 10, top 8, they're top whatever. We're going to let some things go, and we're going to let Brian Flores come run our organization. And I think that it would just add more to his resume. He doesn't need a resume booster, but I think him coming in, turning around a situation. And again, it doesn't have to necessarily be Cleveland. I use them as an example because I want him to come to Cleveland. But I think if he can go somewhere, be their DC, turn it around, get them to be a top 10 team, I think he has his pick of the litter the next time the coaching carousel comes around.
Okay, so I want to finish this topic because I feel really strongly about this, and you guys know how adamant I've been about Brian Flores. Huge fan. I actually, when we did this show almost a year or 2 years ago, I had Brian Flores as one of my top 5 coaches when we were ranking coaches in the NFL. I just want to say this out loud because I don't think it's been said enough. The Miami Dolphins traded for Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, Jeff Wilson, signed Raheem Mostert, added, got a stud left tackle, Teron Armstead.
Yep.
Yes.
From the Saints.
I'm just doing this all off memory. I apologize.
Yep.
And finished with the exact same record they fired Brian Flores for. 9-8. The exact same record. I just want this to be clear. What happened to him in Miami is despicable. So let's add on to that, right? I think Brian Flores doesn't take a job with an organization unless the ownership and the team and everything match up perfectly. I think he stays in that Steelers organization until he finds the right fit, an organization he can be with for 10 years. Now let's move on to our wild card. I just want one team that has a current head coach that you think will have a different head coach next year and who that head coach may be.
I'm ready. I got mine ready. It was one of my bold predictions last year, and I'm sticking with it. I think the New England Patriots will have a new head coach next year, and they're going to promote from within, and that head coach is going to be Gerard Mayo. I think Bill gives him a glowing recommendation, and I think he rides off into the sunset.
Are you talking about like this upcoming year?
Yeah.
Yep.
He announced this morning that he's coming back.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I did not see that.
Cottrell was ready. I'm just kidding. Shall give me one.
All right, so I'm not going to take yours, but I agree with yours. So I think this though kind of throws a wild card or a monkey wrench per se into what me and you think is going to happen. I think, especially if they lose this weekend, I think there's a good chance Mike McCarthy gets fired from Dallas. If that happens, then it becomes a bidding war because I don't think there's any way that Jerry Jones doesn't get Sean Payton.
That's very interesting. I like that, but I'm going to give you mine. I think this team loses this weekend also. I think the Los Angeles Chargers lose at Jacksonville against Dougie P and Trevor Lawrence, and I think Brandon Staley gets the axe, and I think the Chargers give up anything they can give up to get Sean Payton as their next head coach. Picture this, Chargers fans. I hope Jake's listening because I love the guy. Picture this. You have Justin Herbert, young, talented quarterback. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. You got all that talent you paid for on defense with Sean Payton running the show with a great head coach that is proven to be successful with a successful offense. How would you like that for your young quarterback to be mentored into the future? Watch out, AFC. You'll see multiple Super Bowls coming for the Los Angeles Chargers if that happens.
I will
if that
say
job
the other
opens up, it's the most attractive job by far.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the other team that is somewhat of a wild card is all these rumors surrounding Sean McVay in the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, I think he's coming back, but like
he's gone.
I think he's coming back, but like all signs point to him not being there.
That is the least. That's what I was going to say at the end. That is the least attractive job in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
That is a complete tear it down to the studs, get rid of everybody. You're 2 or 3 years away from being good again, rebuild. And I don't think he wants to stay there for it. I don't.
No.
Yeah, because I mean they have no draft picks. Yep, no draft picks. And you figure if McVay leaves, Aaron Donald's probably going to retire.
He just
he's going to retire. I think. I mean, he can still walk away whenever he wants. I think Matt Stafford's done. Even heard a peep about him. I think his elbow was way worse than anybody wanted to lead on. He got a Super Bowl ring. I think Matt Stafford's done. You're going to have to trade Jalen Ramsey and all those guys. I think it's a crap job. It's kind of the Houston Texans. That's kind of what it is.
Maybe that's how they recoup some of those picks. You figure, you get a first rounder for Ramsey, and you're starting from the bottom. You are most definitely.
Anybody gives you a first rounder for Jalen Ramsey right now is
take it.
Damn mind.
Take it quickly. I'll give you one. I'll give you one.
I'm on a statement right now. Our top 10 cornerbacks list next year, Jalen Ramsey won't be on my damn list.
Well,
he won't be on my list.
I don't know about not being on my list
all year, bro.
I mean, that is true. But I mean, if you're a team like, let's say, just example wise, not even money related, but a team like the Bengals or something like that, where you think you're going to be a championship contender and you got a high 20s, hopefully early 30s pick, why not give up a first to get that kind of talent? I know he was bad in that system with the Rams last year, but I don't think Jalen is all the way cooked. Like, I think he still has the talent. I just think he had a bad year.
I think in a bad year, and I think he, as we know, Jalen can do sometimes. Jalen, I think, took a turn to negative town with his attitude once that really started to fall apart. And I think Jalen started to play, not get hurt football, like that type of stuff. And I think Jalen made a couple business decisions this year. Can't really say that I blame him per se, but it's a very, very interesting year for Jalen Ramsey. But I'll give you one. I'll give you one because there's whispers of this, and I started connecting dots here. I think if you get Harbaugh to leave anywhere, and I've only seen it mentioned a couple times, but there's too many connections. And then you started hearing whispers about them firing their coach now, even though they're in the playoffs. I think there's a shot Jim Harbaugh goes to Miami.
It's so ridiculous. I get it.
I agree. That is obviously, other than the Chargers, which I don't think he would go. I don't think he'll be in on that. But the obvious connections with Stephen Ross and the whole Michigan thing. But that is the most, I would say, not say the most, but it's a very win-ready offense.
Agreed.
Just something to look out for. Again, I don't think it happens.
That are happy if McDaniel is back on the open market. He will have a coaching job if that's the case.
Agreed.
I like him. I don't think it'll happen, but wouldn't be one that would surprise me that like broke out of nowhere.
Well, let's get into Wild Card Weekend, my favorite weekend of the year for NFL.
Wild Card.
I love Wild Card Weekend. It's my favorite weekend of the year.
Look at this graphic.
So I want to start, and I'm going to do it in order. 49ers are playing the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks, who literally gifted their way into the playoffs, barely won a game, cost me $4,000. I posted this parlay on Thursday night. I said it on show, on air. I said Rams money line, Commanders money line, Lions money line. It all hits, and the Lions are in the playoffs. It was off by a running into the kicker call. That's what I'll say.
A Baker Mayfield interception in overtime.
Yeah. 49ers win this game by a lot, guys. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I got to give Geno Smith this credit. He got that team to the playoffs when people thought they were going to be the worst team in football, including me, without Jamal Adams. That opening day win over the Broncos, I was like, that's going to be their high point of the whole season. It turns out they're in the playoff. So give Pete Carroll's credit, give Geno Smith his credit, and then send them home early as the San Francisco 49ers run through the Seattle Seahawks.
Agreed. I think it's just possibly the least competitive game of the weekend. I think it's going to be dominant. I think Seattle's going to struggle to move the ball against that defense that is just playing otherworldly right now. And, I think maybe Seattle can maybe get a couple stops early, but I think once, Kyle Shanahan realizes what they're trying to do, he'll get Brock Purdy in positions to make plays. And then I think C-Mac and Debo and all those guys are just going to start taking over, and that's going to be a wrap. I don't know who said it at the beginning of the show, it might have been Gene, said something like this game screams like 27-6 or something. I completely agree. I think this game's over by halftime.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think this 49ers team, they're essentially rested. And I think that against this Seahawks team, that they're going to obviously be seeing them for the third time this year. I think they know what to expect. They know how to slow down Geno and company. And I think they're going to make it really easy on Brock Purdy. You're going to get a lot of C-Mac, a lot of Debo, like Bill said, rush the ball, run it down Seattle's throat, and it'll be a convincing win for them.
Okay. So we'll go Saturday. By the way, I'm cheering so hard for the Seahawks because if the Seahawks by any chance win that game, the Philadelphia Eagles get a bye in the second round, which I would love. I'm sorry, they have to play Seattle, but it's a bye. I'll be cheering for Seattle, but that's not going to happen. I want to go to the Saturday night game. By the way, I'm picking up a shift on Saturday. I take off Wildcard Saturday every year because I'm so excited about the playoffs. And I don't care about the 4:30 game. So I'm going to pick up a shift. But I'll be home for Saturday Night Football. Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Herbert. We've seen this matchup earlier in the year. The Jaguars mud stomped the Chargers earlier this year.
Yes, they did. But the one key thing was this was Justin Herbert's injury game. He was hurt. That's when his rib cage was all messed up. So He really
Injury
probably shouldn't have
game.
been out there. Shouldn't have been out there to be honest.
It was his injury game. It was a no Keenan Allen game. It was a banged up defense game.
So I
So
think this
I'm guessing you
matchup will
guys
look a
are
lot
both on the
different.
Chargers then. Tell me
I'm
about
just saying I think this matchup will look a lot different than it did. What was it, week 4, week 5? However early it was in the season. I think that this Chargers team is gonna win. I mean, it's a nice story about what the Jags have done. Obviously, we've seen Trevor Lawrence take a step. Christian Kirk's had the best year of his career. Evan Ingram's had the best year of his career. Zay Jones as well. I just don't see it happening. I think the Chargers are starting to get healthy at the right time, and I think they have too much for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I got them winning. I think it's a one possession game, but I like the Chargers to win something along the line to 27-21.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with the Chargers as well. I agree with Cottrell. I think it's a one possession game. I agree with Kyle Edwards. I think this has the ability to be the best game of the entire weekend, if I'm being honest. You're going to be the battle of the quarterbacks with the flowing locks. You got Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert. I think this is a lot different than that Week 5 matchup. The Chargers are a completely different team, as are the Jaguars. I just look at it. If the Jaguars didn't play in the division they played in, they wouldn't be in the playoffs. That's nothing against them. They went out and did what they need to do to win their division.
It's not true. They'd be in the 7th seed. They'd be 9-8.
Okay. I mean, they benefited from. Okay, it's fair. They benefited from playing the Colts twice, the Titans twice, and obviously the Texans twice. Chargers debatably play in one of, if probably the second toughest division in football. I just think the Chargers are a better team. I just think they're a team that I feel like is like just a year ahead of where Jacksonville is right now. I think they make enough plays. I like the Chargers to win 31-27. I think it's a great game though, and I think Herbert and Lawrence both play really well.
All right, well I can't wait to get into this because you just said it earlier. Thank you so much, Cottrell. Appreciate you. Evan Ingram, career year. Christian Kirk, career year. Zay Jones, career year. This team had the number 1 pick in the draft last year. And Doug Peterson took this team to the playoffs. I'll run through a wall for Doug. Screw Urban Meyer. I'll run through a wall for Doug. I'm all on the Jags, man. Give me the Jaguars. I don't care. They're like my AFC team now. T-Law and Dougie P. I'm all on them. Give me the Jaguars to win this game. And I think Trevor Lawrence outplays Justin Herbert. And I think after this game, you're going to be asking yourself this question. For the next 10 years, who would you rather have? Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence? Because right now, you're not asking that question. It's Justin Herbert. I get it. But I'm telling you, after this one, you're going to start questioning who would you rather have? Because I'm on the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars win the game. Duval, let's go Jags. Doug EP with the playoff win. Playoff experience over Brandon Staley. All right. Sunday afternoon, 1:00 game. Just had it in front of me. It's okay.
Miami, Buffalo.
Miami Dolphins, no Tua, Skylar Thompson, 13-point spread at the Buffalo Bills. My Gene Super Bowl prediction champion, Buffalo Bills versus Skylar friggin' Thompson. I'll take the Bills by 100.
I agree. Snooze fest. Third string quarterback going to Buffalo. It's going to be cold. I hate everything about this game. Tyreek Hill's not going to be 100%. Denard Hamlin got released from the hospital today. A lot of rumors swirling around. He's going to lead a team on the field. Yep. That place is just going to be mayhem if he's in that stadium. No thanks. I would still take Buffalo if Tua was playing. Third string quarter, Skylar Thompson. Thanks for coming, doing your duty of being quarterback. I think the Dolphins get rolled badly.
Yeah, I think 13 is actually pretty. I understand it's somewhat similar to the national championship game. I think you got to cover your bases. And so I think 13 is a little light. I think Buffalo wins that game by 35 points. We saw Buffalo mud stomp the New England Patriots last year in the playoffs. I think it'll be very similar to that. And you brought up a great point, Bill. DeMar Hamlin being, completely discharged from the hospital. They know that he's in great shape. Obviously, they played for him last week, but even if he's just with them in the tunnel or in the locker room or with them at practice this week, I think that's just going to give them even more motivation to just go out and just put it to that Dolphins team. And the Dolphins are getting injured at the absolute worst time of the year. Obviously, no starting quarterback. Tyreek got hurt last week. Jalen Waddle's not 100%. It's just all things are going downhill for that Miami Dolphins team. I like Buffalo big.
Well, I think if they don't play Joe Flacco last week, they don't win last week, and they're not playing in the playoffs this week. You're watching the Pittsburgh Steelers. But that's between me and the wall. 4 o'clock.
Who do you put, though? Because I think if Zach Wilson's there, you get the same outcome.
No, my point being is if they played any other team that had any offense,
any other team. I got you. Yeah, no, I agree.
My 6-6 prediction was looking really good for a long time in that game.
It was.
All right, so 4:30 game. This is the game that a lot of people are picking as the upset of the week. The New York Giants, they just played there just a month ago, going to Minnesota to play the Minnesota Vikings. Guess what, guys? 3-point spread. What does that tell you? They're literally
Even
listing
team.
these teams as even teams. Guess Minnesota rested some people in the second half last week. The Giants rested their whole team in week 18. Both teams will be fully rested. Game plans, 2 first-year head coaches. Who do you got in this one, Bill?
See, this is tough because you brought up the two, a lot of the points I wanted to touch on. You have 2 first-year coaches. Out of the 2 of them, give me Brian Dable all day. You saw the effort his backups put up against our starters last week. That team loves that man. I mean, it's kind of a Dan Campbell situation. They play hard for him, and he doesn't accept anything less. The Giants are going to go out in that field ready to die on Sunday. And then you just have the same broken record that we've talked about on this show. It's been talked about nationally for years. What are you going to get from Kirk Cousins? It's going to be another game where the lights are going to be real bright. You're going to be at home. You're favored. You got Dalvin Cook. You got Jay Jettas, Adam Thielen. You got all these guys. What Kirk Cousins are we getting? I think if you go overall talent, I still think Minnesota is the more talented team. Giants just play hard, man. I mean, they have their limitations offensively, but Minnesota's not great defensively. I will go New York Giants 24, Minnesota Vikings 21.
Okay, you got Giants win. Cottrell, what do you got?
Skull. Give me the Vikings. I think the Vikings pull it off. They got a little bit more talent than what the Giants do. You bring up the coaching aspect of it. Brian Dable did an excellent job. I really like Kevin O'Connell, though. I think he's a good coach for that Vikings team. I just think their defense was further away than what I feel like everyone realized. Yes, they were successful this year. I feel like they overachieved. Obviously, we saw them get in some of the bigger games, and they got curb stomped by Dallas and some of their other games. They clearly looked outmatched against better quality teams. But I think this Vikings team has the talent to get it done. And essentially it comes down to who am I going to trust more between Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones? I'll take Kirk Cousins. I know Kirk has the bad stigma of the primetime games, but I think he gets it done here and he gets a playoff win. Kirk's got a playoff win under his belt already. So it's not like he hasn't won in the playoffs. Like, he had the drive against the Saints, ultimately threw the game-winning touchdown to Kyle Rudolph. So I think Kirk has what it takes to get it done in this matchup. and I got the Vikings winning. I think it's another close one. I think it's a 1-possession game, but give me the Vikings 30-24.
So really want to respond to Brandon and Joseph Jeffers. Guys, I put 100 on it too, and I know the 565 cash out that Brandon's talking about because I looked at it too. I was really upset that parlay didn't hit. I appreciate you guys following and tailing on that. I apologize. I'm going to keep trying to give you guys good games, but if you took them point spread, you won because they all three covered. But I said money line, so I'll stand by that. All right, guys. The Giants are going to beat the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are absolute frauds. I've been saying it all year. They're 11-0 one-possession games. They have so many close games that they've won this year. They're not that good of a team. Their secondary is like on their fourth and fifth stringers. Here's one thing I want to point out. Look at the Giants depth chart right now. I hope Eric Rosenblum's in the chat. Who do you think wide receiver 1 is right now on the Giants depth chart?
Kenny Galladay?
That is correct. That ridiculous catch he made in the end zone versus the Eagles seems to put him in favor. It looks like he's going to be starting as wide receiver 1. Slayton will be playing. I think the Giants win the game. I really do. I think that Saquon Barkley has a great game, and I think the Giants beat the Vikings outright, and I think it sets up perfectly for Philadelphia. Philadelphia gets to play the Giants next week as opposed to Dallas, and we can set up for a great NFC Championship game with the Eagles-Cowboys. But I don't want to give away my next pick if you didn't hear it already. I will take the Vikings to lose this one. I'll take the Giants to win, and I think it'll be a good game. I think it's going to be 26-23. Giants.
It's actually I don't want to get too far into. I know we're going to get into it more. Because we still have another game to go over, couple games to go over. But it's interesting that you said I heard you slip in Eagles Cowboys championship game. That'll be real interesting. I'm sure you're chomping at the bit to get to something like that.
I would love it. I'll get into that in a minute, though. After this, we can give our final four, how we think it plays out, if you will, like, and then we'll talk about it. So we got to finish our bracket. We got to finish our games. So it looks like Lamar Jackson's not going to play again.
Not looking promising anyway.
I'm going to ask you guys a question real quick because I'm picking the Bengals. I think you guys are all picking the Bengals. Am I right here?
I was picking him if he did play.
Okay. So the question around this game, and I'm going to just get your opinion on it. Do you believe that Lamar Jackson is healthy enough to play and is not playing because of his contract situation?
I think it factors into it. I think right now if I had to guess, I would say he's 70%. And I think normally that's good enough to play. But with the contract in play, I feel like he's treating it as if he's 50%. And so that's why he's not playing.
100% agree. I think he's 70-75%. I think a normal week, if he already had his contract, he'd run out there and leave his heart on that field for Baltimore. I don't think he's going to do it Sunday. I don't.
Can I ask you just another follow-up question to that? I heard somebody say, I think it was Freddie. He goes, well, he doesn't have a contract. That's why he's not playing. He does have a contract. Did the Baltimore Ravens not offer this man a massive contract extension that he turned down?
Mm-hmm.
They offered him $44 million. That's not what Lamar wanted, but they offered him $44 million. So to act like he doesn't have a contract is absurd. He's under contract. And guess what? If the Baltimore and I think what Lamar Jackson's doing, and I'm just telling you the truth, this is the way I feel. This is not the opinion of Wire to Wire. This is my opinion. I think what he's doing is making sure they don't franchise him next year by doing this. Oh, cool. You want to keep me on a 1-year contract? I am going to sit my ass down. I think he's at 90% sitting. It was a 3-week injury when it happened. We're going on 7 weeks since the injury.
I get that, but it's a knee injury, and we've seen we saw what happened to RG3 and how that derailed him. Obviously, he's not. This isn't nearly the extent of what RG3's original injury was, but we saw that he was never the same after re-injuring the knee that he had tore up earlier in the year. And I also think that the whole contract thing, yes, Baltimore did offer him a contract, but to act like it was, I mean, he wasn't even getting what Kyler's getting paid, and he has an MVP under his belt in
That
guaranteed
doesn't
money.
matter, Cottrell.
I disagree.
It
I disagree.
doesn't
Why not
matter.
why not get what you're worth?
Well,
Just because you offer me money
Because
doesn't mean
Arizona
it's
made
not
a
what I'm
mistake.
worth.
Baltimore has to make a mistake. Arizona is a poverty franchise.
That's the market.
Poverty franchise.
That's how the market works. That's how the
But
market
that's
is
wrong.
worked.
It's wrong. Baltimore is
So-
a winning franchise.
So now Lamar has to be basically the martyr for all athletes across the world because he's injured and now he shouldn't get paid. That's not how that's going to work. It's not going to be if you know that you're better than a quarterback that's getting paid more money than you. There's no way you're going to willingly take less money than him. It's just not going to happen.
This all started 3 years ago with Mahomes. Now, obviously, Mahomes, you could argue, is worth the money. But then after that, Aaron Rodgers signed a contract, being on 40 years old, making $40-some million a year. Then you had the two that really threw this all out of whack. I mean, I wouldn't pay Rodgers that money, but again, based on his past accomplishments and what his value was to Green Bay, you can at least make an argument there. You could stand there and make an argument that makes sense. Then you have the two contracts that threw all this out of whack for everybody, and everybody's going to pay for it, including our Eagles, Gene. You had Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray, who combined have done jack shit. Both get $45 million plus deals a year. If I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm better than both of them handily. I'm not signing for less than that. And I'm sure it's all not playing hurt for less than that.
But you should still play. You're under contract.
Now that part, you know how I am with this stuff. That part I 100% agree with.
Okay, so I want to make a point, just a small point. Last year was the first year, and I want to count them real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. In 11 straight years, the Super Bowl champion did not have a quarterback that was paid in the top 5 in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read them to you if you like. Tom Brady takes less money to be around a good team. You had Patrick Mahomes on a rookie contract, Tom Brady in New England, Nick Foles, Carson Wentz in Philadelphia, Tom Brady in New England, Peyton Manning on the last year of his deal, which was like $23 million in Denver, Tom Brady in New England, Russell Wilson on a rookie deal, Joe Flacco, Eli Manning, Aaron Rodgers, and then Drew Brees, who was a top 5 paid quarterback when they won in Indianapolis.
Look, I'm not arguing the analytics of anything. I understand quarterback payroll comes into it. It's a big aspect of how NFL rosters are going to be filled out and how they get to basically divvy out their money. But again, I know Lamar knows what he's worth, and you see what these quarterbacks are getting. Whether he should be playing or not, injured, that's a topic for another day. I feel obviously it's topic of today, but I feel like him not being 100%, he doesn't feel like he's ready to go out there in his situation. And I said it a couple weeks ago, and I'll say it again. I think Baltimore screwed over this situation. They should have got him paid before Dak got his contract, before Kyler got his deal, or if you see that they got paid, offer them just a little bit more than what you gave them, because now you're in a situation where you're either going to have to franchise him, or if he just keeps refusing to play, eventually you're going to have to move him, or he walks for nothing if he plays next year, and that's that. So I think Baltimore did themselves a disservice, and I guarantee you the Philadelphia Eagles won't do the same thing. I guarantee
they won't.
They get that taken care of.
They will, and they're going to overpay Jalen Hurts, which I'm not saying he's not worth it, not worth being paid as one of the top quarterbacks in the league, but this is what the league that we're in now. But what loyalty do you not have to the organization? Like, I'm not like trying. They drafted you. It wasn't like they drafted you in the first round. They had a 5-year contract window that you got. They developed the entire offense around your skill set, your game. They drafted 2 receivers in the first round. They drafted a center to protect you. They drafted a running back in the second round to make sure they had, like, the organization has built their entire team around Lamar Jackson. They've offered him $44 million because they're a smart organization. They're not a dumb organization like Arizona, Dallas, and Denver.
I don't disagree with that point.
But what loyalty do you not have to that organization for helping you become a $45 million a year quarterback? You can at least play out your contract, man. Listen, I understand if he gets signed to the franchise tag and he's on a 0-year contract and he's just franchised, like he didn't sign with the team. If he does this, that's not what the situation is. He was so happy to sign that 5-year first-round contract deal by being the last pick of the first round. That's why they traded up to get him for the 5th year. It's just, it baffles and blows my mind how it's always the players. There's got to be some loyalty to a good organization that spent money on you, that invested in you as an offense. That Ravens organization is not a poverty franchise.
It's not. And I somewhat agree with you there. But at the same time, for example, we saw Earl Thomas just a couple seasons ago have all the loyalty in the world with the Seattle Seahawks. He gets hurt and he loses out on a bunch of money. Obviously, they don't respect him enough to get him a contract. And not respect, but it's a business at the end of the day. It's a bottom line business. And he had to move on, and he didn't recoup the money that he lost by going out there on that franchise tag and getting hurt. And that's why you saw that frustration when he got carted off and he was giving his sideline the finger. So there's nothing in me that at different ages, I understand that, but there's nothing in me that thinks if Lamar Jackson were to get hurt, let's say he tears up his knee even more. And I don't want to say ACL because that's like quite literally worst case scenario, but just, a sprained knee or a meniscus, something like that. There's nothing in me that thinks that Baltimore would still give him the same amount of money that they would if, he was out there completely healthy. Like, I don't think they're that loyal to him in that aspect.
Bill, any final thoughts here? I want to move on.
No, I mean, the backside of it, I completely agree with you, Gene. I think regardless of what's going to happen next year in this offseason, you're under contract right now. And to your point, they have been loyal to him. They did trade back up into the first round to draft him because they thought they could build around him. I agree with all that. And, I gave Kyler the same flack last year. I think there's hurt and there's injured. He's not playing for free right now. If he's able to play, he should play Sunday. I don't think that should be the only reason. I think the money shouldn't be the only reason he shouldn't play. If he's 50 and his knee's unstable, then then you can't go out there and play. But if he's able to go out and play, he should go out and play with his teammates. But I do agree with Cottrell.
Diagnosed the injury as a 3-week injury. He was supposed to play in week 16. It's freaking week 19. It's insanity.
So it's only 4 weeks. It's one extra week.
No. He's also not a typical quarterback though. Like, him having a knee injury is completely different than, let's say, Tom Brady or, someone else having a knee injury. Like, Lamar relies so heavily on his legs. And so I think it's a different situation.
He hasn't played since week 13.
Okay.
Last game on the docket. The easiest game on the docket to pick. I don't know how you guys don't see it the way I see it. If you're this is what you're doing, right? And I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you guys. You're looking at the myth and the ghost of Tom Brady past and expecting him to come through and sweep you off your feet. That's not going to happen. Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence are going to be in that guy's face the entire day. Dallas is going to destroy Tampa. I'll put it to you this way. Dallas is going to beat Tampa so bad on Monday Night Football that's going to make you question whether the Rams beating the Cardinals last year on Monday Night Football was worse. 41-6 That's what it's going to look like. You guys are out of your damn mind if you think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to play awful all year, and then dude, the only stats I've heard for this game, it's Tom Brady in the playoffs, and then I heard Tom Brady's undefeated versus Dallas. None of that shit matters Sunday. Dallas's defense is better. Dallas's offense is better. Dallas's offensive line is better. Dallas has better running game. The Patriots have the 32nd best rushing offense in football. And you want Tom Brady drop back 40 times versus DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs and Dan Quinn's system? They're going to get killed. I'm losing my mind. Tell me how I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, I think the easy way to tell you how you're wrong is, I mean, one, I'm taking the Bucs to win completely, and two, well, my second point would be the myth of Tom Brady. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but there is no myth when it comes to the Cowboys choking away playoff games. Like that's not a myth, and so everything on paper, says that they should win this game and this and that. But we saw that last year though. Like, yeah, San Francisco was good last year. Like, don't get me wrong, they had a good team, but Dallas was supposed to win that game. And what happened? They found a way to lose it. So I think with Tampa Bay, yes, they've played horrible, for the majority of this season. I think Mike Evans and Tom Brady getting that connection, that three touchdown, 200-yard game for Mike Evans. I think that was really big for them in getting at least some sort of momentum. And even the first drive in Atlanta, they had the offense flowing and they moved down the field perfectly and, capped it off with the touchdown. So I think they're figuring out what works, what doesn't work. I mean, ultimately, I think, they've already had rumors about Leftwich being out of there at the end of this season. But I think the Bucs pull this game out because one, we saw worked week one. This is a Bucs team that beat those Cowboys. And I know it was off of a lot of field goals and they couldn't punch the ball into the end zone, but defensively they figured out what worked and how to slow down that Dallas team. And we saw just last week, the Cowboys were going up against the Commanders and they could not move the ball down the field. And you could say what you want to about them not taking the game serious or trying to get some sort of rest. But at the time they were playing that game, the Eagles were only up. I believe it was 16-0 at that point. And the Cowboys just really had no answer. Like, it wasn't like the Giants were completely out of it early and the Cowboys could relax. They were still in a position to potentially get the number one seed. Obviously, none of us thought it was going to happen, but they were in that position, and they go out there with that performance against the rookie quarterback in his first career start ever. So I feel like this Cowboys team is just, they are what they are. And you talked about Mike McCarthy not having a job after this season. I think this is going to be the nail in that coffin.
Yeah, Bill.
This game is tough because you look at it. You're looking at a team in Tampa Bay that has struggled all year, looked better the last 2 weeks. Not going to say great, but looked better. And then you have a team in Dallas who has been very good to great most of the year and looked terrible the last 2 weeks. You're asking me to choose between Tom Brady and him figuring it out and getting enough time to throw against that Dallas defense versus Dak, who's in his own accord, not good, doesn't have some exemplary playoff record or performance himself, and he looked absolutely terrible the last 2 weeks. As out of sync as Tampa Bay's offense is, you could argue Dallas's is worse. It's tough. Tampa Bay's going to be home. I just think it's a weird thing. Like I said, I think the Giants beat Minnesota, and I think that sets up if Tom beats Dallas, then Tom goes home and plays San Francisco, and maybe his last game's at home. Put the tinfoil hat on maybe, or maybe a lot of wishful thinking. But Tampa Bay's defense is healthy. They looked a lot better the last couple of weeks. And to Cottrell's point, I don't want to hear any excuses out of Dallas. Dallas kept their starters in that entire game, and they tried to win that game, and they couldn't. They flat out got outplayed by Washington last week.
Yeah.
I expect to see a better effort, obviously. I think they'll look better against Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay's defense, I think Dallas's defense is better, but I think Dallas is, I still think Dallas is going to really struggle to move the ball against Tampa Bay. I think their defense is more than capable. And if you're asking me which quarterback I want against a great defense, I'm not taking Dak Prescott over Tom Brady. I'm not. I think it's a close game. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think it's something 21-17, 20-16, something like that. I think Tampa Bay pulls it out.
Give me your final four.
Well, why are we doing that now? Like, we'll be on, we're on before all these teams play again.
I just want to predict my final four before the playoffs start.
Okay.
On air.
My final four: Kansas City and Buffalo in the AFC. And then I hate going chalk, but
I feel like there's only really one team you can sub in or out of here.
You know what? Give me Philly and Tampa Bay. Tom will somehow find a way to beat San Francisco. Brock Purdy struggles against that defense.
Based on your picks, that can't happen. Philly would play Tampa Bay next round because you picked Minnesota. So pick a winner between Minnesota.
Eagles. I'll go Eagles and San Fran. Then I'll go chalk 1 and 2 seeds both conferences.
Okay. Bill?
I'll go Eagles, San Fran, and I will also go KC, Buffalo. I think obviously if there's one you could flip out, it would. Gene might pick it, but I realistically think that's the only game that you could probably switch out here.
I'm gonna go Kansas City, Buffalo. I think Cincinnati playing all their starters last week, losing their right tackle. They have no left tackle, no right tackle, no right guard now. That's a problem. I think Buffalo beats Cincinnati next week. I'll take Kansas City versus Buffalo on the one side, and I will take Philadelphia versus Dallas in the NFC Championship game for all the marbles in Philadelphia, and I cannot wait. That'll be the most anticipated watch game in Philadelphia sports history outside the Super Bowl. I'm looking forward to it, man. Kansas City, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Dallas for a chip to go to the Super Bowl. It'll be super fun to watch, and that's where I'm at. So
I do want to make it known, though. My rooting interest is still with the Chargers. Picked them before the season. I thought there was no chance that they'd even get here, and I'm rooting for them.
Can I ask you guys a question? I wanted to ask this question before, and then we'll move right on it, show the pick'em final, and then we'll do a little bit of tennis, and then you got to be kidding me. But do you think it's a fraudulent thing? Because I've been asking people this. I'm going to ask on air. I'll ask the listeners at home. Because I plan on fully having 2 teams vested interest in my picks. So before the season started, February 15th, the week after the Super Bowl, I told you the Super Bowl would be Buffalo over San Fran. Now I'm telling you Buffalo and Philadelphia. So if Buffalo plays San Fran, I'm going to go back and clip that and pretend that I picked it the whole year. Is that fraudulent to do that?
Very, very fraudulent.
I'm not going to say very. I mean, it's sure as hell not ideal. But
nope, because as soon as Trey Lance got hurt, it was like, nope, 49ers, they're out. Nope, I'm switching. So
that is true.
Trey Lance is not walking through that door. So
you jumped about as high as you can jump off that bandwagon when Trey Lance got hurt.
It's fair. It's fair. But if it's right? If it's Buffalo over San Fran in the Super Bowl, if that's exactly what we get, I got a right to say I picked that on February 15th. No?
I mean,
you picked it and then you denounced your pick. I mean, so
I did denounce it. I moved to Philadelphia. I moved to Philadelphia when I did that. Remember?
You did.
So at that point, I would say it would have to be Buffalo, Philly, and then if you got that right, then I would still let you claim that as being correct.
Okay.
It's San Fran and Buffalo, I don't think you can claim San Fran anymore.
I'm still gonna clip it and pretend it.
That's fine.
All right, guys. Final pick 'em. What was it at? What did it finish at? How we do?
Well, Bill and Gene went 3-0 last week. Then I went 1-2.
Yo, Kittrell, let me ask you a question real quick. Well, thank you so much for doing the pick 'em, keeping this together this year. It was my worst year picking pro football in years. But I still finished above 500. So I get to keep the moniker, the NFL genius. I'm going to keep it because 70% for 2 straight years and then a little bit of 51.4. It's okay. But thank you for keeping this, even though most people that are 22 and 30 on the season would be like, oh, I don't have time to do this anymore. I respect it. Tip my cap.
Right.
Want to also congratulate Kittrell on winning the college football regular season award again, and for Bill on having the best bowl mania of the 3 of us. So we all stick to our names: NFL Genius, Scholastic Shally, College Kittrell. It works. It works. It works.
I know who I am.
All right, so we got a little tennis. Bill, I don't know at all. I'm not kidding with you. It's not a joke. I haven't watched tennis maybe 6 months. I'm not kidding when I say I asked Kittrell. I'm like, hey, is this tennis, the Australian Open?
This is true. This did
or is
happen.
it golf? Is there golf going on this weekend in Australia? I don't know.
That's great.
I swear.
That is
Not
true.
kidding.
That happened. It happened.
No, we're gonna play a little fuzzy ball this week and next week.
Yeah, I'm not
That's
that bad. I call
Yeah.
this is not soccer to me. I still like tennis.
It's like clay ping pong. Is that what we're resorting?
It is ping pong. That's what it is. Ping pong.
I mean, it's
Australia.
not Australia's not clay, but
No, it's hardcore. So anyway, yeah. So we're gonna go down under Melbourne, Australia. First major of the year. Got some noticeable names missing. Carlos Alcaraz, who's the number 1 in the world right now, number 20. He's actually out hurt. Most of the other men's big names will be there. Again, the first major since Roger Federer's retirement. There's no more Fed. And then on the women, you got a full slate. Everybody's there. Nobody's hurt. If you are a tennis fan, you saw the announcement today of Naomi Osaka. She's actually pregnant.
Yep.
Longtime boyfriend. So, congrats to her. I just have a weird feeling she never plays tennis again. I think in some ways, I think this is a blessing in disguise for her. I think she can be at ease and at peace and just kind of go live her life. It was not trending in the right direction for her, trying to battle through playing when you could clearly see she didn't want to play. So congratulations to her. Hope everything goes well. Hope they have a healthy, beautiful baby. And we play on. So play opens on Sunday, I believe. It's Sunday or Monday. It's gonna be brutally hot like it always is down there. Hardcore, and then you got some people chasing history. So it'll be very interesting. Novak's back in this year after the COVID ban and the fake COVID test and denied visa, and they kept him in a hotel room for 4 days. All kinds of crazy stuff. Him and Nadal are tied for most ever. If either one of them wins this, they'll go back in the lead by 1. Be very important for Novak to win this tournament, to go up 1, because we all know what the next major is. That's the French Open on the clay at Roland Garros, and Nadal's damn near unbeatable on that surface. So, I guess I'll do my picks first. You guys want to go first?
No,
what do you want to do?
Let me go first because I don't want you to sway my picks.
All right.
I have picks. I'm going Joker to win.
Okay.
And I'm going for, and I know Iga is going to win probably, but I'm not picking her. I will go down on this show. It's going to happen one. It hasn't happened yet. But Coco Gauff is going to win me a damn major before this thing's over. So I'm going Coco and Joker.
So I'll go next here, and I'm like 95% sure when we picked the Australian Open last year, I picked Nadal to win it, and he actually ended up winning it, and that was because I feel like I knew that Novak wasn't going to play because that was when he was back and forth, and we had the show on Wednesday. We didn't know for sure if he was going to be in the tournament or not, but ended up picking Nadal. I did not realize that Novak has won either 10 or 11 Australian Opens at this so far in his career. This is essentially his home. Like this court, he steps up to the occasion. And I hate picking the favorites in this one, but I think you're going to get a pissed off Novak, and he's going to go down there and he's going to dominate. So I got Novak winning on the men's side. Gene, you already mentioned it. Iga's as dominant as they get on the women's side. I think this one you have more options of people to win, but I think Iga's dominance is going to show, and I think she wins this tournament to start off the year.
Don't do it, Brandon. Don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do it.
No, Brandon, you should do it, and I'll tell you why. So, I'm going to start with the men's. The men's side, I'm picking Joker for all the reasons Catrell and Gene said. Nadal is not 100%. Court is playing very quick from what everybody's gathered. It's been on it so far. I think it's a huge advantage for him as early as he strikes the ball and as great as defense as he plays. I like Joker big time. Joker's actually minus money.
You're not
relax. No, Joker's my pick for the men's.
Okay.
My long shot for the men's, I'm going to go with Felix Auger-Aliassime from Canada. He won 3 straight tournaments to end the year last year, took some time off, rested, got healthy. He's a guy that if he catches fire, he's got a huge serve, get a lot of free points off that serve in the heat. I think he can make a run. I think he can be in the final 6 or final 4 or the final 8. For the women, I'm going to go with Iga. I think she's the best player in the world. I think she's healthy. She's rested. She played a lot of tennis last year. That being said, she's got a lot of points to defend. There's a lot of pressure. She's not so much of the unknown like she was here last year. She's number 1 seed. All eyes are on her. That being said, my long shot, which I would put money on, she's hot. She's playing well right now. I have her written down. My long shot for the women's side is Coco Gauff. Has the baseline game to get it done in Australia. Quick around the court, good from both sides. As long as her serve is on, she'd stay in matches. She is everything that there is. She's all the tools to beat Iga. I don't think she would face her until the quarters, I believe. So she wouldn't see her until very late in the game. So I think if they do meet up, I think most likely the winner of that match is probably going to win the Australian Open. That's why I like her shot. I like her chances a lot.
Go, Coco. You go, Greg Coco. All right, let's get into You Got to Be Kidding Me. Catrell, start us off.
All right, so this week for me comes courtesy of fellow Green Bay Packer himself, Quay Walker. Quay Walker was obviously, first round pick by the Green Bay Packers. He was on the amazing Georgia 21 defense that won national championship. So for you guys that didn't watch the Packers and Lions game, there was a pile up, and he had an Lions assistant coach go over to the pile, and he's not doing anything egregious, just doing his job. And Quay Walker decides to not only grab him, but give him a little push. And so, of course, referee throws a flag. Quay gets ejected, and on his way out, you could see Quay going back through the tunnel. He's crying. He's saying, "I didn't even do anything." Like, he's basically saying it wasn't that big of a deal. But what makes this worse is that this is Quay's second time this season getting ejected for doing the exact same thing. So I just don't know, when are you going to learn your lesson, especially in a game of this magnitude? If you're out there on the field, you can help your team go to the playoffs. It's not like the season is over at this point. This was a win-and-in opportunity, and you were their first-round pick defensively this year. You're supposed to be there for them when things get tough. But instead, you want to put your hands on an innocent athletic trainer that's just trying to go over and do their job. So Quay Walker, not learning your lesson the first time, getting ejected again.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
So the one thing I want to mention with this is Devontae Wyatt should have been ejected too. Not ejected, but flagged. He was bullying, and it was an athletic trainer. It was trying to get to an DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
Look, Quay Walker is very talented. He's always been very talented. He was a first-round draft pick linebacker. I actually think it's really amusing that two teams drafted defensive tackle linebacker combos from Georgia in the same draft. You tell me if that's ever been done. That's insanity, right? Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker. It's pretty insane. But I think that Quay Walker has showed you multiple times the reason why Nakobe Dean was the leader of that defense. And I can't wait until next year when Nakobe Dean gets on the field more, because I'm telling you right now, Kobe Dean's going to be a stud. But we'll find out. We'll see. Bill.
So for mine this week, I'm going to use a combination of the Los Angeles Dodgers and Major League Baseball. So Major League Baseball, they try to keep this as quiet as they could. They reinstated Trevor Bauer this past week. The Dodgers then flew out to Bauer's home on Wednesday night and met with him. They wanted to talk to him because they really haven't talked to him since all the legal proceedings started playing out. He got suspended last year for a full year. And then it was said to be longer, but they reinstated him. And they reinstated him for a key reason. And I'll get to that in a second. They went out and talked to him and point blank told him in his house that they were going to bring him back. He was still technically under contract with the Dodgers. I read 4 different legal briefs on this whole situation the other night, just to really dig into this. Spent way too much time on you got to be kidding me this week. That being said, all four of them, one guy was from Harvard, one was from Yale, and the other 2 guys were from big schools. I can't remember which ones. They all said when this gets to court, Trevor Bauer's lawsuit against Major League Baseball, he is 100% going to win. He's suing for upwards of $300 million. He's going to get every penny of it. If you're not familiar, Trevor Bauer got suspended for 194 games for something deemed not illegal, not by one, but 2 different judges. All charges were never filed in neither Ohio or California. And the state in California where he had his restraining order, once the judge got all the facts in front of her, female judge, mind you, got all the facts in front of her, dropped the restraining order immediately, and in her ruling, I quote, said, I'm not extending this restraining order because he's a threat to no one. Now, you can disagree with Trevor Bauer's, bedroom behavior. I mean, I don't, it's nothing that would excite me, punching a girl or whatever. He had clear evidence numerous times of girls in text messaging, emails, asking for it, saying that's what they wanted done, and he did it. And again, everybody's got a different line. Everybody's got, a different personal preference. That's really not what this is about. It's more about the fact that the Dodgers then went back Thursday, and as soon as this broke wind, they started getting flack about bringing him back, then reversed their decision and said they weren't going to bring him back. The hypocritical part about this is they released a statement saying they believe in the domestic abuse policy that is in accordance with Major League Baseball. He's never been convicted of domestic violence. They have a pitcher on their team who is a very prominent name who's already been convicted and suspended of domestic violence. And they welcome him back with open arms. Julio Urias, who I love. I believe everybody in their life makes mistakes. I believe everybody is to pay a penance and do punishment. And if they're deserving to be of a second chance, that's not my call. But to release a statement and say you're not bringing him back because you believe he broke that policy, when you have a guy on your pitching staff that he will be pitching next to who's already been convicted and suspended because of that same policy, that rubs me the wrong way. Just come out and say you don't want him back because you don't think people in the locker room want him back because they're uncomfortable with what he does behind closed doors, because that's really what you made the decision based upon. It's sure as hell not his talent. It's not anything else. You guys just ceded to public pressure again, and that's really all it boils down to. So this week for me, Los Angeles Dodgers being spineless jellyfish.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. That's a terrible one for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Let me finish with mine. Mine's not too deep or long, but it's the Houston Texans and their handling of Lovie Smith and what this whole situation happened. When the Houston Texans hired Lovie Smith, I, as well as many other people, felt that he was hired as the NFL kind of pushed him to hire an African-American head coach because there were so many prominent African-Americans that were interviewing for jobs last year and none of them got jobs as head coach. So in order to temper that, the NFL basically, I think, used Houston to hire Lovie Smith. They gave him a terrible situation with no quarterback, one of the worst rosters in the NFL, and they fired him after he won Week 18 on a ridiculous play, by the way. 4th and 20 that just no reason should have been knocked down, and then a 2-point conversion to win the game. Listen, I'm not a huge proponent of Lovie Smith being a great NFL coach. I don't think he is. I just want to be clear there. I just don't like the treatment of African-American coaches in the NFL. And I think Houston used them as an absolute pawn. I'm glad Lovie Smith's going to make a lot of money off of this situation. He's going to get paid out his contract because he was let go. But it's just over and over and over again that African-American coaches have a much shorter leash in head coaching hirings and firings in the NFL, and it's not close. We talk about Mike McDaniel as a promising young head coach. Like I said earlier, 9-8 with a better roster than Brian Flores had with the same record that he got fired for. It's repeated. Brandon Staley keeps getting chance after chance. Josh McDaniels was chosen over Derek Carr. It just happens time and time again in this league. How long did Matt Patricia last in Detroit when Jim Caldwell got fired after a playoff appearance? Jim Caldwell took a team to the Super Bowl in Indianapolis. Peyton Manning has neck surgery before the season starts. They have a terrible year, and they fire Jim Caldwell. He's been cheated twice in 2 different organizations. It's repeated, and it's over and over and over again. Back-to-back years, Houston has scapegoated their African-American head coach from David Culley to now Lovie Smith. The NFL and the Houston Texans will be this week's. You got to be kidding me.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
That's what we got for show 118. Anyone have any final comments this week?
No, I mean, college football's done. It's always a little bit of a bittersweet week for me. I'm sure it is for Cottrell as well. Always makes it a little bit easier because, we roll right into the NFL playoffs. But it's the best time of year, man. Best time of year.
You guys ready for college basketball to get really rolling? I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, about a week and a half into conference play, so we're gonna pick that up running, and we always have fun with that as well.
But show 118, Joe.
I was gonna say I got just a couple quick shout outs because who am I not to plug my teams here? Kent State Golden Flashes, undefeated men's basketball team, undefeated in conference play so far. They are 12-3, and they're rolling. And the other shout out has to go to Ohio State's women's basketball team that's currently number 3 in the country, undefeated. So it's a special time for Ohio basketball here, and we're loving it. So I'm hoping to see my Flashes get to the dance, and I'm hoping to see the Ohio State women's basketball team cut down the nets, come April. So I'm really looking forward to college basketball ramping up.
I appreciate you, Homer Simpson. I really do. I'll tell you right now, you make Ohio seem like a place I want to go, even though I've been there and I don't like it. But I love it. I appreciate your hometown love, and I appreciate everybody tuning in, the comments, the likes, the shares. Appreciate everybody tuning in the comments. Sports Empire Network, Freddie, everything you guys do. Appreciate you. And with that, this is Wire to Wire, show 118, signing